Chapter 683. In the void, Nie Tian's figure appeared in front of Mo Zhaojing. He stared at Mo Zhaojing with a sinister smile and said, Mo Zhaojing, come on, the third palm strike. Mo Zhaojing, you are a warrior at the peak of the spirit will realm, but you can't even kill a warrior at the third tier of the spirit will realm with 2 palms. What a piece of trash. His voice reverberated in the void. It was the most ruthless mockery for Mo Zhaojing. As Nie Tian spoke, his body shook. His blood-stained clothes were torn to shreds, revealing his strong muscles. Inside his body, surging power burst out, and the air was filled with a strong life force. Under the gaze of countless pairs of eyes, the wounds on Nie Tian's body healed at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. All of this was too strange. What kind of power was hidden in Nie Tian's body to be able to heal his wounds in an instant? Rumor had it that warriors at the heavenly evolution realm had the will of heaven in their bodies, which could evolve into life force and heal wounds in an instant. However, Nie Tian was clearly not a warrior at the heavenly evolution realm. How could he heal his wounds in an instant? This was too unbelievable. The power that Nie Tian displayed was beyond everyone's imagination. Dragon energy. It's the power of the divine dragon. Suddenly, someone noticed something and exclaimed. Everyone was stunned, but they immediately realized that the power that surged out of Nie Tian's body was dragon energy. It was dragon energy that was healing his wounds at an extremely fast speed. Nie Tian was made of flesh and blood. How could his body produce dragon energy? Everyone swallowed hard. Everything that they saw from Nie Tian was so shocking that they were almost numb. That's right, the power that surged out of Nie Tian's body was dragon energy. Just now, Nie Tian suddenly felt that the 9 dragon-shaped energy meridians in his body became unusually active. Mo Zhaojing's palm strike seemed to have stimulated the potential of the 9-star dragon meridians, and the 9 dragon-shaped energy meridians suddenly erupted with powerful dragon energy. Streams of dragon energy surged within Nie Tian's body, causing all the meridians in his body to become active. There seemed to be an endless amount of power in his body. Everyone could sense that the dragon chi around Nie Tian was getting stronger and stronger. His aura was getting stronger and stronger as if it would not stop. The sudden scene caused Mo Zhaojing's eyes to widen. His expression became painful and complicated. Not only did he fail to kill Nie Tian with his full strength, but he had instead stimulated some sort of powerful energy within the latter's body. How could he accept this? He broke through. The next moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt the power in his body skyrocket again. He looked inside his body and suddenly discovered that his strength had actually advanced to the 4th tier of the divine wheel. The surrounding people also immediately noticed that Nie Tian's aura had become tyrannical, and their expressions became extremely astonished. Who would have thought that not only did Mo Zhaojing's 2 palm strikes not kill Nie Tian, but it also inexplicably helped him increase his strength by 1 tier. The power of the 9-star dragon vein allowed Nie Tian's strength to increase by 1 tier. The dragon vein in his body had changed again, and it looked more like a dragon now. Damn it! Mo Zhaojing was about to go crazy. He roared angrily, and his voice became hoarse. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up slightly. He took a step forward and said coldly, "The 3rd palm strike come." With the increase in strength and the evolution of the 9-star dragon vein, Nie Tian's defense had greatly increased. He was confident that he could deal with Mo Zhaojing's 3rd palm strike. Nie Tian, if I don't kill you, my name is not Mo Zhaojing. Mo Zhaojing was flustered and exasperated. His face turned the color of an eggplant, and his eyes were bloodshot. His eyeballs were about to pop out. The 3rd palm strike will take your life. Mo Zhaojing's aura surged crazily, and a lotus made of white bones appeared behind him. The lotus bloomed layer by layer, and what it emitted was not a fragrance, but a bloody and violent aura. Demon bone white lotus. Seeing this, Tang Hao's slightly relaxed face suddenly darkened, and he uttered a name. The white bone lotus behind Mo Zhaojing was called the demon bone white lotus, and it was his origin spirit. This time, he really did not care about anything else. He directly used the giant spirit true body to explode with the most terrifying attack. He must take Nie Tian's life. Nie Tian's eyes focused when he saw the demon bone white lotus behind Mo Zhaojing's back. He actually felt a strange life force, and this aura actually made the dragon vein in his body become active again. It really is the demon bone white lotus. Inside the primal chaos original coffin, Demon Lord Corpse Luo's voice suddenly sounded, and his eyes became hot. Corpse Luo, you know this kind of origin spirit? Nie Tian was slightly stunned. Demon Lord Corpse Luo chuckled and said, Master, the demon bone white lotus is one of the 3 great magical flowers of the demon race, and it has an extremely strong life force. The demonic dragons are carnivorous spiritual beasts, but they only eat one kind of flower, and that is the demon bone white lotus. It is said that the demon bone white lotus can stimulate the divine dragon power in the demonic dragons. Unfortunately, there are so many demonic dragons in the demon world, but not one has truly activated the divine dragon power. Listening to Corpse Luo's explanation, Nie Tian slowly understood something. He had seen the demonic dragons in his previous life. They were an extremely powerful rank 9 spiritual beast, and under his sword Absolute Heaven Slash, countless demonic dragons had died. Rumor has it that the demonic dragons were the descendants of the ancient divine dragons, and were a subspecies of the divine dragons. They had the blood of the divine dragons in their bodies, but they could not activate it, so they could not be compared to the real divine dragons. Since the demon bone white lotus could stimulate the divine dragon power of the demonic dragons, then it was not surprising that Mo Zhaojing's 2 palms could stimulate the 9-star dragon vein power in Nie Tian's body. Master, Mo Zhaojing's demon bone white lotus primordial spirit is a little strange. It is more powerful than the ordinary demon bone white lotus. No wonder this person can be compared to Tang Hao, who has the ghost eye. Corpse Luo's voice sounded again, and he reminded Nie Tian. His next palm is no small matter. Master, you must be careful. Nie Tian nodded solemnly, and he became more cautious. Die. Mo Zhaojing's furious voice sounded, and he slapped out a powerful palm. A demon bone white lotus bloomed in the air, and a bone-chilling aura pervaded the air. The demon bone white lotus bloomed layer by layer, and the blooming petals fell one by one. In the center of the lotus, an extremely strange white flower bud suddenly bloomed. Whoosh! A sharp white blade shot out at an extremely fast speed, and in the blink of an eye, it attacked Nie Tian. In the void, a sharp blade whistled through the air, and Nie Tian's entire body's defenses were activated layer by layer. Astral Shield, Sword 17, Sky Water Extreme Yuan Armor, Dragon Scale Shield, Chi of True Origin, and Sword of the Divine Wheel were all released at the same time. Bang! The demon bone white blade descended, and directly hit the Sword of the Divine Wheel, producing a dull sound. The seemingly ordinary demon bone white blade contained an incomparably terrifying power. In the next moment, Sword of the Divine Wheel broken, Chi of True Origin broken, Dragon Scale Shield broken, Heavenly Water Extreme Yuan Armor broken, Sword 17 broken, Astral Shield broken. 6 layers of defense instantly collapsed, and Nie Tian was directly hit, and his body shot out like a meteor. Everyone's nerves were tense, and they did not dare to breathe loudly. Their eyes followed the figure in the sky. Whoosh! Whoosh! At that moment, the figure in the sky suddenly moved, and a pair of sword shadows condensed into wings. Chapter 684. Nie Tian stood in the air and stared at Mo Zhaojing with a burning gaze. For the third palm strike, Mo Zhaojing used his giant spiritual body and the demon bone blade of the demon bone white lotus. 6 layers of Nye Tian's defense were shattered. However, he still had a 7th layer of defense, which was his 9-star dragon vein body. With the protection of dragon chi, even the demon bone blade couldn't injure him seriously. Nye Tian's vital chi was severely depleted, but he didn't care. He stared at Mo Zhaojing coldly, waiting for the latter to let him go. 3 palms. Nye Tian really took 3 palms from Mo Zhaojing. The crowd looked at the figure in the sky. No one expected that Nye Tian could take 3 palms from Mo Zhaojing. Countless pairs of eyes became infatuated as they looked at Nye Tian with shock, awe, reverence, and even worship. Tang Hao, Meng Fanchen, and the rest were stunned. Their mouths were wide open, and they couldn't say a word. Tang Hao thought that he could also take 3 palms from Mo Zhaojing, but he was at the peak of the spirit wheel level, while Nye Tian was only at the 3rd level of the spirit wheel level. Although he didn't know what happened to Nye Tian, Tang Hao was sure that his teacher was more terrifying than before. He's not dead. Mo Zhaojing was stunned for a few seconds. He only reacted when Nye Tian's voice rang in his ears. His face was full of shock as he screamed. He used all his strength in one palm strike, but it didn't kill Nye Tian. How was that possible? Mo Zhaojing, I've disappointed you that I'm not dead, Nye Tian sneered. He smiled cold. 3 palms have passed. Let him go. Mo Zhaojing's body shook violently. His pupils constricted as if he had just woken up from a dream. He kept muttering, "Impossible, impossible, this is impossible." After a long time, Mo Zhaojing finally calmed down. Suddenly, his eyes revealed a hint of ruthlessness. He looked at Nye Tian with trembling eyes and roared, "Let him go!" In front of the entire world, Mo Zhaojing did not dare to go back on his words, but a strange light flashed in his eyes. 2 of the Mo family's martial practitioners walked forward, cautiously handing Nyeyuro over to Nye Tian. Nye Tian carefully examined Nyeyuro's body with his divine sense, and after confirming that the latter was fine, he relaxed quite a bit. Although Nye Tian and Mo Yu were in a life and death duel, Mo Yu had already become a cripple. He had no intention of entangling with him anymore, and the Meru martial meet should also be over. However, just as Nye Tian was about to leave, Mo Zhaojing suddenly laughed maniacally. "Nye Tian!" Mo Zhaojing roared and stared coldly at Nye Tian. "You took 3 palms from me for your sister. What price are you willing to pay for Mo Rushi?" Mo Rushi. Upon hearing this name, Nye Tian's body trembled and his pupils shrank. At this moment, 2 more people appeared behind Mo Zhaojing. One of them was carrying a bed, and on the bed lay a red-haired girl. It was Mo Rushi. Mo Zhaojing had not only kidnapped Nyeyuro, but also Mo Rushi. Hiss! The sudden scene caused the crowd to suck in a breath of cold air. Mo Zhaojing had kidnapped 2 of Nye Tian's closest relatives. The first one wanted Nye Tian to take 3 palms from him, and the second one wanted Nye Tian to take 3 more palms. Nye Tian's origin power was currently exhausted, and it was impossible for him to take 3 more palms from Mo Zhaojing. Mo Zhaojing! Nye Tian handed Nyeyuro over to Meng Fanchen. He was completely enraged, and the aura around his body rose sharply. His entire person was as sharp as an unsheathed sword, as if he wanted to split the heavens. Mo Zhaojing, do you know what you're doing? Tang Hao reacted and roared angrily. Nye Tian, Tang Hao, you're the ones who forced me to do this. Since Nye Tian crippled my son, I'll cripple him too. Mo Zhaojing smiled coldly and said, Nye Tian, if you want to save Mo Rushi, then cripple your own origin meridians. Cripple his own origin meridians. Mo Zhaojing's words were like thunder, shaking everyone's heart. He did not want Nye Tian to take 3 more palms, but to make Nye Tian cripple his own origin meridians. How vicious! In an instant, everyone's gaze was once again focused on Nye Tian, waiting for his reply. Will Nye Tian really cripple his own origin meridians for Mo Rushi? Everyone was doubtful. All right, I promise you. Nie Tian's voice rang out almost as soon as Emo Zhaojing finished speaking. For Emo Rushi, he was willing to cripple his own origin meridians. Everyone's gaze instantly froze, as if time had stopped at this moment. Countless pairs of eyes stared at Nie Tian, the shock in their hearts written all over their faces. Nie Tian was a super genius with a limitless future, but once he crippled his own origin meridians, it was equivalent to ending his life. Teacher! This time, Tang Hao could no longer control himself. He took a step forward and cried out mournfully. Teacher? When the crowd heard Tang Hao's voice, their pupils suddenly constricted. They could not believe their ears, nor could they believe their eyes. Nie Tian was Tang Hao's teacher? How was this possible? Everyone froze at this moment. Even Emo Zhaojing was stunned on the spot. Nie Tian did not care about the crowd's reaction. He took a step forward, his body trembled slightly, and a powerful force surged in his origin meridians. As long as he willed it, his 9 origin meridians would instantly crumble. Interesting. Just as Nie Tian was about to cripple his own origin meridians, an extremely sinister and evil voice suddenly rang out. Since this girl is so important to Elder Nie Tian, I will take her away first. As the faint voice fell, a cloud of black chi suddenly appeared in the air and filled the air. The 2 martial artists beside Emo Zhaojing did not understand what was going on, and they immediately fell to the ground. Emo Rushi was swept away by the cloud of black chi, and the sinister voice sounded again. Nie Tian, you killed my son, so your life can only be taken by me. If you want this girl to be safe, come find me in 3 days at the land of bloody massacre. As the sinister voice fell, the cloud of black chi instantly disappeared. Tang Hao, stop him! Nie Tian let out a roar and all of his blood boiled. Amidst the endless blood-colored light, he thrust his sword forward, and 100-meter-long blood-colored sword shadow blossomed, pressing down on the void. Boom! The sound of the air being cut was heard. The sword did not hit anything. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and most people could not react in time. The cloud of black chi was none other than the pavilion master of Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, Yu Guai. No one would have thought that Yu Guai had been hiding in the dojo all this time and had never left. Tang Hao finally reacted. His body trembled and he soared into the sky. He activated the myriad tribulation's ghost eyes, but there was no one in the void. Yu Guai's concealment technique was too brilliant. If he did not take the initiative, he would not have been able to detect his presence. Leave her here. At that moment, a delicate voice was heard, and a figure suddenly appeared. Immediately, a crimson pillar of fire shot out and bombarded the void. Chapter 685. A pillar of fire and a blade aura suddenly appeared in the air. Their auras were ferocious and unparalleled. Rui Qianyu, Elder Yi. Nie Tian looked at the 2 people in the air, and called out their names. The 2 people who suddenly attacked were Rui Qianyu and Elder Yi. Rui Qianyu had the rainbow eyes. Even spirit ghosts could not hide from her eyes. But how did Old Man Yi discover the existence of nether ghosts? His blade intent has become stronger. Could it be? In the next moment, Nie Tian suddenly realized that Elder Ye's blade intent had become stronger. He immediately understood that Elder Ye's blade art had reached the realm of Blade Soul. Blade Soul was formed by the Blade Spirit. Not only did it increase the power of the blade wielder's blade intent, but it also greatly increased the wielder's perception. Old Man Yi was able to sense the existence of the nether ghost because he had a saber soul in his body. A surprised voice could be heard in the air. Spirit ghosts did not expect that they would be exposed. Die! Tang Hao immediately discovered spirit ghosts. Without hesitation, he opened his myriad tribulation ghost eyes. Endless eye power surged out of his eyes and condensed into a blood-red ray of light that attacked spirit ghosts. The rainbow eyes contained the power to burn the heavens, the blade soul contained the power of the blade wielder, and the myriad tribulation ghost eyes contained the power of the myriad tribulation ghost eyes. The three powers merged together and were unstoppable. Even spirit ghosts did not dare to take such a powerful attack head-on. In the air, endless black chi spread out and turned into a strange rune. The rune spun in the air and instantly expanded thousands of times. It was like a giant net that covered the sky and suddenly fell down. Blood-severing seal. Nye Tian smelled a familiar aura from the rune net. It was the blood-severing seal. The power of the blood seal runes surged as a vast force pressed down on Lin Yun. Blood-severing seal is a gift I prepared for this Sumeru martial meet. Enjoy it. Spirit Ghost's evil voice sounded. The black chi in the air gradually moved away and was about to disappear in the blink of an eye. Leave him here. Nye Tian's eyes were filled with venom. He stomped hard in the void and his figure soared into the sky. He actually dashed up against the power of the blood seal. Teacher! Nye Tian! Mr. Nye! Tang Hao, Rui Qinyu, and Yi Linyun's voices rang out at the same time. Three figures followed closely behind Nye Tian. Heaven shrouding totem, rise! Nye Tian's silhouette flickered like a bolt of lightning, and the moment he came into contact with the blood-severing seal, a tremendous amount of star force gushed out from his body. At the moment, he was already a fourth-tier divine wheel warrior and had awakened the power of 40 billion stars in his body. Dazzling starlight flickered in the sky, instantly forming a large net that covered the sky. Nye Tian controlled the heaven-shrouding totem to cover his entire body as he charged towards the severing blood seal. Yu Gue, who was high up in the sky, felt the terrifying power of the heaven-shrouding totem. His gaze suddenly tightened and he was greatly shocked. He sneered and said, Nye Tian, no wonder you can kill Yumi Xian. So there is such a terrifying power hidden in your body. It seems that I have underestimated you. Nye Tian did not care. The heaven-shrouding totem transformed into a sharp blade that seemed capable of cutting through everything as he charged over. Yu Gue frowned slightly when he saw Nye Tian's unparalleled bravery. The corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. He waved his arm and a black aura descended. He laughed sinisterly and said, Nye Tian, I will return Mo Rushi to you. However, she has been struck by my blood-severing seal. If I do not treat her within 3 days, she will definitely die. I will be waiting for you in the land of blood massacre. You must come. Remember to bring the map of the vein of vitality. Nye Tian saw a cloud of black aura floating in the sky. He extended his divine sense and found out that it was Mo Rushi. He stabbed out with his sword. A sword intent flew out and wrapped around the cloud of black aura. Mo Rushi's figure gradually appeared. Rushi. Nye Tian stretched out his hand to catch the figure in the sky. He saw that Mo Rushi's face was as pale as paper. There were faint traces of blood on her face. It was a sign that she had been struck by the blood-severing seal. Bastard! An angry roar resounded in the void. Nye Tian was on the verge of going crazy. Mo Rushi was already unconscious. Now that she had been struck by the blood-severing seal, how could she bear it? Right at this moment, 6 strange black shadows suddenly appeared in the sky. They gradually revealed themselves. They were 6 skinny old men that looked like dried corpses. 6 venerables, make your move. Yu Gue bowed slightly to the 6 old men. He seemed to be very respectful. The 6 old men nodded. 6 blood seal runes appeared in their hands at the same time. Each of them was stronger than Yu Gue's runes. The 6 blood seal runes flew out at the same time. The power of the runes surged crazily and instantly expanded by tens of thousands of times. All the runes' power connected together and formed an overwhelming blood seal rune net that pressed down on the arena. Nye Tian, the game has just begun. Enjoy my gift. Yu Gue's evil voice sounded again. The 6 dried corpses turned into 6 clouds of black aura and hid in his body. The cold and evil laughter gradually disappeared. Gui's figure also turned into a cloud of black aura and hid in the void. Oh no! Nie Tian saw the blood seal rune net appear in the sky. His heart sank. He immediately understood that Gui had hidden in the Meru martial meet for this moment. He wanted everyone to be struck by the blood-severing seal. Nie Tian guessed that the bloody slaughter palace had been annihilated overnight because of this method. The blood seal rune net descended. The hundreds of thousands of people in the Meru martial arena were covered. There was no way to escape. Those who could watch the Meru martial meet were all people with some strength in the 3,000 lesser world. If all these people were killed by the blood-severing seal, then half of the 3,000 lesser worlds would be destroyed. The land of blood slaughter, the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. What were they trying to do? This was not the time to think about these things. Nie Tian's figure descended and handed Mo Rushi to Rui Qinyu. He then raised his head and looked at the blood seal rune net above his head. The heaven-shrouding totem, whether you can withstand it or not depends on you. Nie Tian's eyes flashed with a sharp light. His expression instantly became determined. He took a step and his figure soared into the sky. The heaven-shrouding totem behind him completely unfolded and rushed toward the blood seal rune net. Nie Tian actually wanted to use the heaven-shrouding totem to resist the blood seal rune net. Teacher! Tang Hao roared in grief when he saw this scene. Mr. Nie! Elder Yi was extremely moved. With Nie Tian's strength, he could completely leave before the blood seal rune net descended. However, he chose to resist the blood seal rune net to save the people below. The crowd on the martial field looked at the figure in the sky with solemn expressions, all of them moved. Tang Hao, Elder Yi, don't worry about me. Take everyone and leave. Nie Tian roared. The power of the blood seal rune was stronger than he had expected. Although the heaven-shrouding totem was powerful, it could not display its full power. At most, it could only resist the blood seal rune for a few minutes. Brother Yi, take everyone and leave. I'll stay and help teacher. Tang Hao no longer had any scruples. He turned around and said to Yi Linyun. Chapter 686. Elder Yi raised his head and looked at Nie Tian with a solemn expression. He nodded firmly and left immediately. In the martial arts arena, the crowd quickly evacuated. Many spirit wheel stage experts directly bombarded the walls of the martial arts arena. Unfortunately, the walls were dozens of meters thick and were reinforced by spiritual formations. Even spirit wheel stage experts could not destroy them. Everyone, enter the martial arts arena and leave from the exit. Nie Tian looked down. There were very few entrances and exits to the viewing platform. If the crowd wanted to leave from there, it would take at least a few hours. On the other hand, there were many entrances and exits to the martial arts arena. Every arena had an entrance and exit. The crowd would first enter the martial arts arena and then leave from the martial arts arena. Everyone, hurry up. Lord Nie Tian is trying to buy time for us. Everyone, don't panic. Whoever dares to squeeze, I will be the first to kill him. Lord Nie Tian is not afraid of death. If we are in a mess, we are really not human. In the crowd, someone shouted and spontaneously formed a long line. One by one, the long line entered the martial arts gathering and left from the exit of the martial arts arena. Nie Tian looked at the crowd in the martial arts arena. His eyes became somewhat blurred. In the battle with Mou, he received 3 palm strikes from Mo Zhaojing. His elemental energy was already exhausted. Just now, when he wanted to kill the Nether Ghost, he used the forbidden move of the Ao Sword Arts. At this time, he forcefully activated the heaven-shrouding totem. He had already reached the limit of his physique and elemental energy. Teacher! Tang Hao noticed that Nie Tian's breath had become unstable. He took a step forward and a stream of elemental energy flowed into the latter's body. With the support of Tang Hao's elemental energy, Nie Tian's complexion improved a lot. However, at this time, Nie Tian suddenly felt that the power of the bloodstain formation net had suddenly increased. He frowned and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood-stain formation net suddenly sank. Nye Tian was about to be unable to bear it. Teacher, let's go. Tang Hao's heart was in pain. He wanted to leave with Nye Tian. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Nye Tian smiled at Tang Hao calmly. When Tang Hao saw that expression, his eyes became moist. He had seen that expression countless times. Every time he worried about Nye Tian, the latter would always use that expression to comfort him. Tang Hao wanted to help Nye Tian, but he was powerless. The heaven-shrouding totem required the power of the stars, and he did not have this kind of power. Mr. Nye, let me help you. Just when Tang Hao was on the brink of despair, a feminine voice was heard. A petite figure appeared. Her silvery hair fluttered in the wind, and a third eye opened between her brows. Tawny. Nye Tian looked at the person who had come, and a hint of joy appeared on his solemn face. The person who had come was none other than Tawny. Tawny's scar of the dusk eye opened. Within her pupils, blood-colored pupil power permeated the air and surged into the heaven-shrouding totem like a raging wave. The heaven-shrouding totem, which had been gradually dimming, suddenly shone with starlight. Nye Tian and Tawny had worked together once in the chaotic abyss. Now that they were working together again, they had a tacit understanding of each other. The blood-stain formation net was hit by the heaven-shrouding totem and emitted a violent roar. Even the air was compressed and emitted sparks. Nye Tian. At this moment Ruoyu's figure also appeared. He came to Nye Tian's side and his eyes trembled. He did not expect that Nye Tian would forcefully block the blood-stain formation net. The moment the blood-stain formation net appeared, Ruoyu was more frightened than anyone else. Back then, the people from the bloody slaughter palace had died under the blood-stain formation net. Although he was only 5 years old at that time, he would never forget that scene. If it were not for Nye Tian today, the hundreds of thousands of people from the Sumeru martial gathering would have suffered the same fate as the people from the bloody slaughter palace. With the support of the Eye of the Scar of Dusk, the power of the heaven-shrouding totem had greatly increased, and the blood-stain formation net was temporarily controlled. The crowd below slowly dispersed, and gradually, the number of people became much smaller. Nye Tian let out a long breath, and his heart felt much more relaxed. Nye Tian, I'll kill you! However, at this moment, a ruthless voice suddenly sounded. Immediately, a demon bone blade appeared and shot out, attacking Nye Tian. Emo Zhaojing. Nye Tian's eyes focused, and he saw a sinister face. Who would have thought that at this moment, Emo Zhaojing still wanted to kill Nye Tian? He wanted to avenge Emo Yu too much, and this kind of mentality almost drove him crazy. Emo Zhaojing, you have a death wish! At this critical moment, Tang Hao roared. The eye of the ghost eye flickered, and a blood-red blade appeared in the void. Bam! The demon bone blade and the blood-red blade collided, and an explosion sounded in the void. Tang Hao's figure flickered, and his strange eyes flashed with a hint of killing intent. Coldly, he said, Emo Zhaojing, if you dare to take half a step forward, you'll die. Is that so? Emo Zhaojing's face was sinister, and his entire body was filled with killing intent. He roared, Emo family martial artists, kill Nye Tian for me. At this moment, Nye Tian wanted to fight against the bloodstain formation net, and anyone could kill him. As long as Emo Zhaojing delayed Tang Hao, the Emo family martial artists would rush forward, and Nye Tian would die without a doubt. However, the 4 martial artists behind Emo Zhaojing looked at him dumbly, and did not react at all. Bastards, didn't you hear what I said? Seeing that the 4 martial artists did not attack, Emo Zhaojing's body trembled, and he roared violently. Master, are you crazy? Finally, one of the martial artists from the Emo family took a step forward and roared angrily, Master Nye Tian is saving us, but you want to kill him. Master, you can't keep making mistakes. The other 3 also looked at Emo Zhaojing, and their eyes were mixed with anger. Even an idiot could see what Nye Tian was doing, and Mo Zhaojing actually wanted to kill him at this time. Did he still have any conscience in his heart? Mo Feng, kill Nie Tian for me. Mo Zhaojing only had hatred for Nie Tian, and did not listen to anyone else. He roared angrily, turned around, and saw that Mo Feng had long disappeared. Bastards! You're all trash. Mo Zhaojing cursed, and the killing intent in his eyes did not diminish. He glared fiercely at Nie Tian, but he was afraid of Tang Hao, and did not dare to attack. Nie Tianling looked at Mo Zhaojing coldly. The latter was the master of the family, but his actions were so shameless. If the Mo family was in his hands, it would be destroyed sooner or later. Brother Mo, let's work together and kill Nie Tian. At this moment, another voice sounded. Zhang Tingyin. Nie Tian's eyes focused, and he looked toward the direction of the voice. The person who came was none other than the Dan Wu Hall master, Zhang Tingyin. Zhang Tingyi's eyes were like poison, and he was carrying a corpse in his hand. It was Mo Feng. He smiled coldly and pointed at Mo Feng. Brother Mo, your Mo family's dog is disobedient. I'll kill it for you. You won't mind, right? Mo Zhaojing was slightly stunned, and then he smiled coldly. Hall Master Zhang, as long as you're willing to help me kill Nie Tian, everything is negotiable. Zhang Tingyin, you. Tang Hao looked at Zhang Tingyin, who suddenly appeared, and was shocked speechless. Dan Wu Hall Master? Suddenly, Nie Tianling smiled coldly and stared at Zhang Tingyin. He said coldly, Zhang Tingyin, Yumi Xian, one of the Yu and Ming elders. Who is he to you? Chapter 687. When the Dan Martial Hall's Zhang Tingyin heard Nie Tian mention Yumi Xian's name, his body abruptly trembled, and his expression instantly stiffened. Immediately after, his gaze became gloomy and cold as he said in a cold voice, Nie Tian, it really was you who killed Yumi Xian. Zhang Tingyin, you're indeed from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, Nie Tianling said indifferently. If I'm not wrong, you're the other of the Yu and Ming elders, right? When Zhang Tingyin appeared, Nie Tian noticed that the former also had the aura of netherworld ghost chi. It was very similar to Yumi Xian's, but it was much stronger. Nie Tian, you're very smart. You've exceeded my expectations. Zhang Tingyin didn't conceal it anymore. The muscles on his face changed eerily and turned into a bony skeleton face. His aura also changed and became eerie and cold. Tang Hao's expression stiffened. He was quite surprised. How could he have imagined that the Dan Wu Hall master was actually from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion? Nie Tianling smiled coldly and said, he's not the real Zhang Tingyin. He just replaced Zhang Tingyi's identity. I'm afraid the real Zhang Tingyin is already dead. That's right. The skeletal elder smiled sinisterly. My name is Yumi Huang. The Real Dan Wu Hall master has already died in the hands of Lord Ghost King. Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojing were stunned at the same time. They didn't expect that Zhang Tingyin was actually dead. The Dan Wu Hall master was actually from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. If this news got out, the Alchemist Guild would lose all its face. Yumi Huang, Yu Gui has left, but you still dare to stay. Is it to take revenge for Yumi Xian? Nie Tian's expression was cold without any fear. It was frightening. Yumi Xian and Yumi Huang were called the Yu and Ming elders, and their names were so similar. They were obviously brothers. Yumi Huang must have appeared to take revenge for Yumi Xian. Nie Tian, since you know, all the more I can't let you live. Yumi Huang smiled coldly and turned to Mo Zhaojing. Mo family head, how about we work together to kill Nie Tian? Mo Zhaojing was stunned at first, then his eyes flashed with passion. The corners of his mouth curled up as he nodded and said, You stop Tang Hao, I'll kill Nie Tian. Yumi Huang was more powerful than Yumi Xian. He was also in the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel. He was not much weaker than Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojing. It was impossible for him to defeat Tang Hao, but he could still stop him for a while. Tang Hao's expression darkened. He took a step forward and stood in front of Nie Tian. As long as I'm here, I won't allow anyone to hurt teacher. Teacher? Emo Zhaojing smirked coldly. Tang Hao, I think you're possessed. How can a kid be your teacher? Don't waste your breath on them. Attack! Yumi Huang roared, and his qi aura surged. Boundless black qi spread out, and the air was filled with the stench of blood. Tang Hao, be careful. This is ghost qi from the netherworld. It can make people hallucinate. Nie Tian growled and reminded Tang Hao. Tang Hao frowned slightly. He saw the black qi raging in the air like black snakes dancing in the air. It was chilling. Yumi Huang's ghost qi was stronger than Yumi Xian's. The ghost qi in the air became thicker and thicker. Boundless ghost qi condensed into 5 ferocious ghost faces, and the bloody killing intent was about to burst out. The wailing of thousands of ghosts could be heard in the air. It was eerie and unsettling. Tang Hao's pupils suddenly constricted. He opened his myriad tribulation ghost eyes and looked coldly at the 5 ghost faces in the air. He smiled coldly and muttered 3 words, myriad tribulation kill. As soon as he said the word, a blood-red blade whistled through the air. It ignored all obstacles and attacked Yumi Huang. Whoosh! The blood-red blade flew past and drew a bloody arc in the air. The ghost qi in the air instantly disappeared. Yumi Huang stood on the spot. His eyes suddenly widened and he slowly raised his hands. A red line suddenly exploded on his neck, and blood immediately gushed out. Before he could react, Yumi Huang's body fell to the ground, and he died on the spot. One move. Just one move had killed Yumi Huang, who was in the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel. That was the terror of the myriad tribulation ghost eyes. Emo Zhaojing watched Yumi Huang's figure fall. He was stunned and did not react for a long time. Nie Tian's expression also stiffened slightly. Then, he laughed bitterly. He had underestimated the myriad tribulation ghost eyes. His warning just now was a little laughable. If Tang Hao had not activated the myriad tribulation ghost eyes, Yumi Huang might have been able to stop him for a while. However, in the face of the myriad tribulation ghost eyes, Yumi Huang could not even withstand one move. After killing Yumi Huang, Tang Hao turned to Emo Zhaojing. His ghostly eyes were locked onto the latter, and they were filled with a cold, killing intent. Brother Tang, you're not going to kill me, are you? Emo Zhaojing said abruptly with a dull expression. At this moment, facing Tang Hao's myriad tribulation ghost eyes, Emo Zhaojing was afraid. That pair of eyes actually made him unable to muster up any will to resist. Tang Hao's gaze slightly focused, and he began to hesitate in his heart. When Nie Tian saw this scene, he shook his head slightly. Tang Hao had been soft-hearted since he was young. He did not expect that even after more than 100 years, he still could not change this bad habit. Being merciful to one's enemy was being cruel to oneself. With Emo Zhaojing's character, even if Tang Hao let him go now, not only would he not be grateful to Tang Hao, but he would also hate him even more. For people like Emo Zhaojing, the best way to deal with them was one word: kill. Tang Hao, kill him. When he thought of this, Nie Tian's gaze became ice-cold, and he spoke indifferently. Tang Hao's body suddenly trembled, and then he nodded solemnly. It's not that easy to kill me. Suddenly, Emo Zhaojing let out a strange cry and completely put away his pitiful disguise. The demon bone white lotus bloomed behind him, and all the origin power in his body surged out. A demon bone blade shot out, and a terrifying aura suddenly erupted. Watch out! Nie Tian cried out in alarm. Emo Zhaojing was too cunning. He first pretended to be pitiful, and when Tang Hao let his guard down, he actually suddenly attacked. Tang Hao's gaze focused, and endless pupil power surged out from his eyes. Thousands of ghost blades appeared in the air, and like a sky full of arrows, they surged out like a raging wave. Boom! In the air, a loud sound was heard, and the demon bone blade was completely submerged by the thousands of ghost blades. Emo Zhaojing felt the murderous aura coming towards him. His eyes could not help but tremble, and an unconcealable despair appeared in his eyes. Tang Hao's thousand tribulations ghost eyes was too strong, and he could not resist at all. Mo Zhaojing's mouth opened wide, and he wanted to say something, but he only managed to say one word, and then he did not have the chance to say the rest of the words. Boom! Thousands of ghost blades were like giant galloping beasts, whistling past. Mo Zhaojing's body was completely submerged, and not even his bones were left. Mo Zhaojing, the master of the Mo family, one of the strongest cultivators in the 3,000 small worlds, was dead. Nie Tian and the others were stunned, and they could not react for a long time. Chapter 688. The Mahist clan cultivators looked at Tang Hao from afar, their eyes filled with fear. Originally, everyone thought that Tang Hao and Mo Zhaojing should be evenly matched. Who could have expected that Tang Hao would kill Mo Zhaojing in one move? Tang Hao was indeed the strongest person in the 3,000 small realms. However, Nie Tian knew that if Tang Hao had not activated the Myriad Tribulation Ghost Eye, it would have been very difficult for him to kill Mo Zhaojing. Tang Hao had killed Yumi Huang and Mo Zhaojing in an instant. However, he had activated the Myriad Tribulation Ghost Eye consecutively and even used its innate magic power. This made his eyes hurt, and blood leaked out of the corners of his eyes. Nie Tian looked below. Most of the people in the dueling grounds had already left. He looked at Tawny and said, "You guys go first." Tawny nodded slightly. Her Eye of Sunset Scar had already reached its limit. It would be very difficult for her to continue. "Wait for me at the Gu residence," Nie Tian said to Zhent's Rain. Zhent's Rain nodded slightly and left with Tawny. The Mahist clan cultivators glanced at Nie Tian and left as well. "Let's go." After everyone had left, Nie Tian raised his head and took a look at the blood seal talisman net above his head. Shortly after, his figure moved, and the totem that covered the sky disappeared. The proud sword Heavenly Wings appeared on his back. With a flap of the wings, his figure left at an extremely fast speed. Tang Hao followed closely behind Nie Tian, and the two of them left the dueling grounds in the blink of an eye. After flying out of the dueling grounds, Nie Tian stood high in the sky. He saw the blood talisman net pressing down like a mountain collapsing. Rumble! In the next instant, the blood talisman net fell, and the entire dueling grounds collapsed. The ground shook and rocks flew everywhere. Waves of earth rose nearly 100 meters high. All the buildings within several kilometers collapsed. It was like the end of the world. Nie Tian and Tang Hao stood high in the sky, quietly watching everything on the ground. If Nie Tian had not used the heaven-shrouding totem to block the blood-stained talisman net, almost everyone in the arena would have died tragically. After a long, long time, the dust finally settled. The entire martial arena had turned into a giant pit, and there was still the power of the blood runes surging in the air. It seemed that it would take a very long time for them to dissipate. "Teacher, what are these runes? How can it be so terrifying?" Tang Hao was stunned for a long time before he finally came to his senses and asked in horror. "This is the blood-severing seal. More than 20 years ago, the blood slaughter palace was destroyed by this seal." Nie Tian frowned. He never thought that the power of the blood-severing seal would be so terrifying. The arena with a radius of several thousand meters turned into ruins in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Nie Tian recalled the 6 mummified old men who had laid down the severing blood seal. None of them were any weaker than the Nether Ghost. Moreover, Nether Ghost was very respectful towards them, seemingly addressing them as venerable. Nie Tian guessed that those 6 old men should be people from the land of bloody slaughter. After laying down the blood-severing seal, the 6 old men hid inside the Nether Ghost's body. It seemed that they had used some kind of secret technique to leave the land of bloody slaughter. The land of bloody slaughter had painstakingly laid down the severing blood-severing seal. It seemed that they wanted to deal a heavy blow to the 3,000 lesser worlds, but they didn't expect that it would be destroyed by Nie Tian. "Tang Hao, Nie Tian spread out his divine sense and sensed that the power of the blood-severing seal on the ground was still very strong. He couldn't help but frown. "Teacher," Tang Hao respectfully said, "make the area within a radius of 10 kilometers of the martial arena a forbidden area. No one is allowed to enter." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Yes." Tang Hao nodded and looked at Nie Tian. There were thousands of questions in his heart, but he didn't know how to ask. Nie Tian naturally knew what Tang Hao was thinking. He faintly smiled and said, "I'll tell you about my matters later. In the future, don't call me teacher or Lord Nie Tian. Just call me Nie Tian." "How can I do that?" Tang Hao reacted very strongly, appearing very excited. Nie Tian's lips curled up helplessly. "Then," he said, "I'll call you Mr. Nie then." Tang Hao knew that Nie Tian did not want to expose his identity. After thinking for a while, he nodded. Countless people on the ground stared in the direction of the Meru martial arena, flabbergasted. Unconcealable fear appeared in their eyes. "Tang Hao, I have to return to the Gu residence first. I'll leave the rest to you. After you're done, come to the Gu residence to look for me." Nie Tian was worried about Emo Rushi's and Nie Yuro's safety. He did not want to stay any longer, so he turned around and prepared to leave. Just at this moment, two figures suddenly appeared. They were the other two clan heads, Gu Xuanmiao and Qiu Shinfeng. "Elder Nie Tian." Gu Xuanmiao and Qiu Shinfeng arrived at Nie Tian's side. Their gazes toward Nie Tian had an additional hint of reverence. Then, they bowed deeply to Nie Tian. At this moment, although the two did not know Nie Tian's true identity, Tang Hao was very respectful to Nie Tian. This was enough to show how high Nie Tian's status was. Furthermore, Nie Tian had just saved everyone. Just this point alone made him worthy of their respect. Nie Tian had a calm expression as he said directly, "Clan heads, there is no need to be so polite. I'm tired. Goodbye." Nie Tian's reaction to the four noble clans' clan heads was extremely calm, so calm that it was strange. Gu Xuanmiao and Qiu Shinfeng exchanged glances. They had not expected Nie Tian to have such a reaction. Nie Tian's attitude had always been like this. His attitude was the same in front of everyone. One should not always be low-key, nor should they always be ostentatious. One should always be neither servile nor overbearing. When Nie Tian first met the four clan heads, he did not look up to them. Now, Nie Tian would not look down on them either. "Brother Gu, Brother Qiu, Mr. Nie does indeed need to rest. Leave the rest to us." Tang Hao took a step forward and said indifferently. Gu Xuanmiao and Qiu Shinfeng were slightly startled. Of course, they noticed that Tang Hao's way of addressing Nie Tian had changed. They knew that Nie Tian was hiding his identity, so they did not point it out. Nie Tian was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something. He turned around and looked at Qiu Shinfeng. "Elder Nie Tian, about the past." Qiu Shinfeng's scalp went numb from Nie Tian's stare. When he thought of the few conflicts between the Qiu clan and Nie Tian, his heart sank and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. If someone were to see this scene, who knew what they would think if they saw Nie Tian, one of the four great clansmen, being drenched in cold sweat with a single glance? "The conflicts between the Qiu clan and me are written off." Nie Tian's expression was indifferent as he said indifferently, "Thank you, Elder Nie Tian." Qiu Shinfeng's heart was finally at ease. He bowed slightly to Nie Tian. "Qiu clan." Nie Tian's gaze trembled slightly. He asked, "Is Qiu Xiaofeng from the Qiu clan?" Qiu Shinfeng was slightly startled. His expression, which had just relaxed a little, suddenly became tense. He gulped and replied, "He is a direct descendant of the Qiu clan. He is from the Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion." Before Qiu Shinfeng could finish, Nie Tian directly interrupted him. With these words, Nie Tian took a step forward in the air and disappeared in a flash. "Xiaofeng, he." Qiu Shinfeng froze on the spot. After a long while, he sighed, The clan is unfortunate. Nye Tian did not explain anything. He only said one sentence indifferently, but Qiu Shinfeng completely believed him. This was the dignity of a powerful expert. Tang Hao, remember to bring me the Yuan Qi vein map. At that moment, Nye Tian's voice suddenly sounded, and then his aura completely disappeared. Chapter 689. Sumi Spiritual Capital, Gu Residence. Meng Fanchen, Gu Yi, and the others were waiting anxiously outside the room. After a while, Nye Tian walked out of Emo Rushi's room with a pale face and a grave expression. Elder Nye Tian, how is Miss Emo? Meng Fanchen asked anxiously when he saw Nye Tian walk out. I've temporarily suppressed the blood seal's power. However, it won't be easy to remove it completely, Nye Tian sighed and said. I plan to go to the land of bloody massacre tomorrow. He had already seen that Emo Rushi's life was in danger due to the splitting blood seal. Emo Rushi was already unconscious, and it was unknown whether she was alive or not. Now that she was struck by the splitting blood seal, her life was in danger. The worst thing was that the splitting blood seal seemed to have affected Emo Rushi's phoenix soul. There was a violent force in her body that seemed to want to tear her apart. Before Yu Gue left, he said that if Emo Rushi wasn't treated within 3 days, she would die without a doubt. Nye Tian did not believe Nether Ghost's words. He had just used the dragon energy in his body to help Emo Rushi temporarily suppress the blood seal. However, if he wanted to wake Emo Rushi up, he still had to go to the land of blood massacre. The power of the blood seal in Emo Rushi's body wasn't strong yet, and Nye Tian could suppress it with his dragon chi. However, as time passed, the power of the blood seal would grow stronger, and even his dragon chi wouldn't be able to suppress it. The splitting blood seal was very strange, and it was different from the seals that Nye Tian had encountered before. He could only suppress it now and couldn't remove it. If he forcefully removed it, Emo Rushi would be in danger. Therefore, he had to find Yu Gue and find a way to remove the blood seal. We're going to the land of bloody massacre tomorrow? Meng Fanchen and the others were stunned and said worriedly, You haven't recovered from your injuries, and you've exhausted too much essence power. I'm afraid it's not appropriate to go to the land of bloody massacre now. I know what I'm doing. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, Is Tang Hao here? Meng Fanchen nodded and said, The 3 masters are all here and are waiting in the main hall. Nye Tian defeated Mou and became the champion of the Shumi martial meet. Originally, the 4 patriarchs should have come together to give him the Yuan Qi geographical map. Unfortunately, Mo Zhaojing was already dead. From now on, the Mo clan would decline and fall from the ranks of the 4 great clans. At this time, Rain, True Su, and Tawny also appeared. It seems like the 10,000-year ice soul has helped you temporarily suppress the power of the blood seal. Nye Tian smiled faintly when he saw True Case Rain's calm aura and sharp eyes. He had asked Yang Zixiao to use the 10,000-year ice soul to suppress the power of the blood seal in Raindrop's body, and from the looks of it, the effect was not bad. However, while the 10,000-year ice soul was suppressing the blood seal, it was also suppressing True Case's strength. It was only ensuring that he wouldn't be devoured by the blood seal. If he wanted to completely solve the problem of the blood seal, he had to find the person who cast the seal. After a while, everyone arrived at the great hall of the Gu residence. Mr. Nye, this is the Essence geographical map. Tang Hao took a step forward and respectfully presented a simple and unadorned scroll with both hands to Nye Tian. When the others saw Tang Hao being so respectful, they were all flabbergasted. Although some people had heard Tang Hao call Nye Tian teacher in the Shumi martial arena, most of them thought that it was a momentary slip of the tongue. At this moment, Tang Hao's attitude toward Nye Tian was very respectful. This made people speculate that Nye Tian's true identity must be very horrifying. Nye Tian did not care about the reactions of the others. He received the Essence geographical map and unfurled it. A simple and unadorned scroll appeared before everyone. When the Essence geographical map was fully unfurled, it was several meters in radius. It did not show rivers or mountains, but the distribution of essence in the sky. Nye Tion's eyes shone like torches as he sent his divine sense into the map to sense the distribution of the vital energy. Vaguely, he seemed to see a dragon-shaped vital energy. All of the vital energy was converging towards the dragon's head, where the vital energy was incomparably dense. The others also looked at the Essence geographical map curiously. However, no one could understand it. This Essence geographical map was created in the ancient era. Even Nye Tion only had a rough understanding of it. How could the others understand it? No wonder the four noble clans could not find the location of the Essence geographical map even after obtaining it for 10-odd years. It was because they could not understand it. Give me a map of the 3,000 small realms. As Nye Tion sensed the direction of the Essence geographical map, his frown deepened. Occasionally, a fervent look flashed in his eyes. Gu Yi immediately brought over the map of the 3,000 small realms and unfurled it before Nye Tion. Nye Tion carefully compared the map of the 3,000 small worlds with the map of the spiritual energy veins, over and over again, without getting tired of it. Everyone's eyes were no longer on the geographical map. Instead, they were focused on Nye Tion. They did not even dare to breathe heavily. They were afraid to make any noise and disturb him. Gradually, beads of sweat appeared on Nye Tion's forehead. His face also slowly turned pale. Phew! After a long time, he let out a long breath. His lips curled into a confident smile. He pointed to a place on the map and asked, "What is this place?" Everyone went forward to take a look. They were all surprised and said a name, Hengduan Tian. Hengduan Tian was the #1 mountain range in the 3,000 small realms. Nye Tion had been there before. It was right next to Discord City. The Essence geographical map is in Hengduan Tian. Nye Tion nodded slightly and said in a deep voice. He had already sensed that the Essence geographical map corresponded to the map of the 3,000 small realms. And the place where the dragon-shaped geographical map converged was in Hengduan Tian. Hengduan Tian. Fu and his wife went to Hengduan Tian. They have not returned yet, Gui said abruptly. Fu went to Hengduan Tian. Nye Tion's eyes narrowed. No wonder he did not see Tong Fu when he returned to the Sumeru spirit. He thought the latter was in Danwu City. He did not expect him to go to Hengduan Tian. The Fu's wife that Gu Yi mentioned must be the cave spirit Adele. But why did Tong Fu and Adele go to Hengduan Tian? Was that Adele's home? Nye Tion did not ask much. If this trip to the Land of Blood massacre went smoothly, he would go to Hengduan Tian. At that time, he might meet Tong Fu. Nye Tion put away the Essence geographical map. His expression became even more serious. Before Yu Gui left, he said that he must bring the Essence geographical map with him. This undoubtedly meant that the Essence geographical map was very important to the Land of Blood massacre. What did the Land of Blood massacre need the Essence geographical map for? Following that, Nye Tion asked about the Sumeru martial arena. After confirming that everything was normal, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he let the others leave, leaving only Tang Hao and Elder Yi. Ever since Ling Xian Tian Pavilion and the Land of Blood massacre appeared, they had always been following behind Nye Tion. This time, Nye Tion was going to take the initiative. Chapter 690. The moon was like a silver plate, and the sky was filled with stars. Standing alone in the small courtyard, Nye Tion looked up into the sky, feeling as if he were the most isolated person in the world. At this moment, his complexion had returned to normal, and his whole person was like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed. The Primal Chaos original coffin and the 9-star dragon vein physique could allow Nye Tion to recover in a very short time. The Primal Chaos original coffin gave him 10 times more time than others, and the 9-star dragon vein physique gave him the ability to recover quickly. Tomorrow, He would go to the Land of Blood massacre with Tang Hao and the others, and he had to return within a month. The power of the blood seal in Mo Rushi's body would explode after a month, and if Nie Tian did not return, it would be terrible. Nie Tian first asked Elder Yi to escort Mo Rushi, Nie Yuro, and the others back to Heaven Luo City, and then meet up with them at the Land of Blood massacre. Sumi Ling City was not a safe place, and only by settling Mo Rushi and the others in Heaven Luo City could Nie Tian be at ease. Heaven Luo City was much safer than Sumi Ling City with Di Shi's protection. Nie Tian stood in the small courtyard, waiting for someone. After a moment, several figures appeared, and they were all people that Nie Tian was most familiar with: Tang Hao, Zhang Yifeng, Duanmu Lu, and Yang Zixiao. Zhang Yifeng and the others came to the courtyard, and when they saw Tang Hao, they subconsciously distanced themselves from him and looked at him strangely. In their hearts, Tang Hao was an unreachable existence that they could only look up to and not stand side by side with. Tang Hao looked at Zhang Yifeng and the others, and his face revealed a kind smile. He had long heard that Nie Tian had accepted a few new disciples, and it seemed that they were the ones. Teacher. Zhang Yifeng, Duanmu Lu, and Yang Zixiao walked over and bowed respectfully to Nie Tian. The three of them had already met each other, and they were about the same age, so they did not feel too restrained. Teacher. At this moment, Tang Hao also stepped forward and greeted respectfully. Teacher. Zhang Yifeng and the other two were stunned. Their expressions froze as they looked at Tang Hao incredulously. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth rose, and he faintly said, "Don't be so surprised. I once told you that apart from you, I have 9 personal disciples, and Tang Hao is one of them. He's your 9th senior brother." 9th senior brother? Zhang Yifeng and the other two were dumbstruck, unable to react for a long time. Tang Hao was the number 1 person in the 3,000 lesser realms. Such a person was actually Nie Tian's 9th disciple? This joke had gone too far. If this was true, then how terrifying would the other 8 disciples of Nie Tian be? And what kind of identity did Nie Tian have? Countless question marks appeared in the minds of the few of them, and they felt like they were in a daze. Junior brothers, I am indeed your senior brother. Tang Hao smiled faintly, appearing very amiable. Zhang Yifeng and the other two were stunned for a long time before they reacted, but their expressions were still dull. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "I know it must be difficult for you to accept, but I can't explain too much now. When the time is right, you will naturally know who I am." Finished speaking, Nie Tian waved his hand slightly, motioning for Zhang Yifeng and the others to leave first. He had asked Zhang Yifeng and the other two to come here just to see Tang Hao, nothing more. Zhang Yifeng had won the first place in the alchemist competition. For the next period of time, he would have to cultivate in the alchemist guild. Furthermore, he would be using the Dan Heart Soul Stone to cultivate. In this way, his spiritual force would definitely skyrocket. Duanmu Lu went out on his own for life experience, and with Gu Wuyo by his side, Nie Tian was very relieved. Yang Zixiao's strength was too weak, and she was too young, so she temporarily stayed in Sumi's spirit capital. Teacher, what happened back then? After Zhang Yifeng and the other two left, Tang Hao finally had a chance to be alone with Nie Tian and couldn't wait to ask. When Nie Tian was killed, it set off a great uproar throughout the Heaven Realm's realm of gods. Later, Daybreak Great Emperor said that Nie Tian intended to rebel and was killed. Of course, Tang Hao didn't believe this statement. He knew that Nie Tian didn't care about worldly power at all, so how could he possibly rebel? Let's not talk about my affairs for now. Nie Tian shook his head slightly and smiled. Let's talk about you. How did you end up in the 3,000 small worlds? Tang Hao nodded and roughly recounted his experience. It turned out that after Nie Tian fell, his 9 direct disciples were hunted down, and Tang Hao was sent to the 3,000 small worlds by his eldest senior brother Han Fei to avoid the Heaven Realm's pursuit. So, you don't know how the others are now? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his face became gloomy. 9 direct disciples had been implicated by him. How could he not be distressed? Yes. Tang Hao nodded. Seeing Nie Tian's serious expression, he comforted him. Don't worry, teacher. The 8 senior brothers are powerful, they will definitely be fine. I hope so. Nie Tian sighed softly. It was useless for him to worry at this time. Following that, the teacher and disciple talked for a long time before Tang Hao left. Nie Tian returned to his room, sat cross-legged, and entered a state of cultivation. At this time, Nie Tian's strength was already at the 4th tier of the divine wheel, and the power of 40 billion stars had awakened in the raw star stone. In the realm of stars, the realm zone formation was operating loudly, and the raw star stone was like a giant pillar that supported the sky, connecting the 9 layers of the galaxy. The power of 40 billion stars is still not enough for the heaven-shrouding totem to unleash its true power. Nie Tian frowned slightly and murmured, "If my strength reaches the 9th tier of the divine wheel, I will be able to awaken the power of 90 billion stars in my body. At that time, the power of the heaven-shrouding totem will be revealed." There was a total of 900 billion stars in the raw star stone. If the power of 90 billion stars was awakened, it could almost light up the first layer of the galaxy, and the true power of the heaven-shrouding totem would be revealed. The power of the heaven-shrouding totem had already been witnessed by Nie Tian. It was actually able to resist the blood seal talisman net jointly launched by the 6 venerables of the land of bloody massacre. It was really terrifying. The heaven-shrouding totem was only a totem of the first layer of the galaxy. When Nie Tian's strength broke through to the heavenly evolution realm, he would be able to activate the power of the stars of the second layer of the galaxy. He did not know what the second totem would be. The totem of the first layer of the galaxy was already so abnormal. The totem of the second layer of the galaxy was simply unimaginable. Nie Tian could feel that the strength of the totem was closely related to the amount of power of the stars in his body awakened. Even if he could completely awaken the power of 100 billion stars of the first layer of the galaxy, he would not be able to unleash the full power of the heaven-shrouding totem. The 9 layers of the galaxy were originally 1. If he wanted the heaven-shrouding totem to unleash its full power, he would have to awaken the power of all 900 billion stars. The power of 900 billion stars was still very far away for the current Nie Tian. As the realm zone formation was operating, waves of power of the stars spread out. Nie Tian felt a strange power surging in his body, giving him an indescribable feeling of comfort. Chapter 691. The land of blood massacre was the most dangerous place in the 3,000 lesser realms. This place was shrouded in a thick bloody mist all year round. The stench of blood filled the air, and the killing intent was overwhelming. Ordinary cultivators did not dare to enter. Those who could survive in the land of blood massacre were all powerful characters. At this moment, several figures appeared in the forest surrounding the land of blood massacre. These people were Nie Tian and the others. In 3 days, Nie Tian and Tang Hao arrived at the land of blood massacre. Elder Yi, who had escorted Mo Rushi and the others back to Heaven Luo City, also hurried over to meet up with Nie Tian. Other than Nie Tian, Tang Hao, and Elder Yi, there were 2 other figures, Raindrop and Tawny. Nie Tian glanced at Tawny. He did not forget his promise to help her retrieve the Red Lotus Beast essence. "Let's go in." Raindrop gazed at the land of blood massacre. Her gaze trembled, and she was the first to step in. Nie Tian and the others followed. Stepping into the land of blood massacre once again, Nie Tian felt very different. His spiritual power had reached the 64th level, and his perception far surpassed that of ordinary people. Previously, he could only feel the suffocating stench of blood in the air. But now, he could feel that the air was filled with some kind of restrictive power. Nie Tian guessed that it was this kind of restrictive power that prevented people from leaving the land of blood massacre. It was the same as Cher's inability to leave the Destiny Forest. If the restrictive power was not broken, the restrictive power in her body would act up. The land of blood massacre is the same as other places, just more cruel. Those without strength cannot survive here. Raindrop said indifferently as she walked. Nie Tian and the others' goal was very clear. They were going to the blood altar in the land of blood massacre. Nie Tian heard from Raindrop that the blood altar was in the deepest part of the land of blood massacre. Not only were there all kinds of powerful spiritual beasts, but there were also a few extremely powerful blood massacre venerables guarding it. Normally, it would be difficult to even approach the blood-colored altar. One could well imagine how difficult it would be for Nie Tian to take the altar away. The blood-colored altar had the power of rebirth, and it was very likely that it was the legendary eighth mystical flame, the Nirvana Sacred Heart. This was the key to awakening Mo Rushi, and no matter what, Nie Tian had to obtain it. As he got closer and closer to the heart of the land of bloody massacre, Nie Tian could feel the stench of blood in the air thickening, making it hard for him to breathe. "Who is it?" Right at this moment, an explosive shout sounded out, and then a few dozen figures suddenly descended and surrounded Nie Tian and the others. These people were all wearing ghost masks. They were the guards of the land of bloody massacre. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes slightly. The aura of the person in front of him was very familiar. He immediately remembered this person, Ma Ninger. The last time Nie Tian had left the land of bloody slaughter, he had been chased by the bloody slaughter guards. The person who had chased him was Ma Ninger. "It's you." Ma Ninger also recognized Nie Tian. His sinister eyes trembled slightly, and then he immediately noticed Ruajinsa. He was stunned for a moment, and then he sneered. "Ruajinsa, you have indeed betrayed us. Great Jinsa has wasted his efforts in nurturing you." Ruajinsa's eyes trembled, but he did not speak. The great Jinsa that Ma Ninger mentioned was his teacher. "You talk too much," Nie Tianling sneered. He took a step forward, released his restrained aura in an instant, and a sword will whistled out. Swoosh! The sword will was cold and sharp. A bright sword gleam swept past, and Ma Ninger's head fell to the ground. When the other bloody slaughter guards saw this, they were all stunned and looked at Nie Tian in disbelief. Ma Ninger was an ancient martial art practitioner at the third tier of the spirit wheel, and she was killed just like that. The strength of this young man in front of them was so terrifying. The next moment, a word appeared in everyone's mind. "Run!" However, it was already too late. Elder Yi took a step forward, and his whole body's sword will gushed out. The fierce and overbearing sword will was like a solid substance. More than a dozen bloody slaughter guards did not even have time to scream before they died on the spot. Not far away, someone saw this scene and sucked in a breath of cold air. Someone actually killed the bloody slaughter guards in the land of bloody massacre. Was this not courting death? "Let's go," Nie Tian said indifferently. They had already been discovered, and they had to rush to the blood-colored altar as soon as possible. "Stop!" At this moment, a cold voice sounded, and a figure descended from the sky. It was a young ancient martial art practitioner who looked to be in his early 20s. When Nie Tian saw the person, he frowned and his heart suddenly sank. The strength of this young ancient martial art practitioner in front of him was actually at the 8th tier of the spirit wheel. In the 3,000 small worlds, there was almost no one who could reach the 8th tier of the spirit wheel at this age. Even Mou had only reached the 9th tier of the spirit wheel with the help of external forces. More importantly, Nie Tian noticed that this person's body was surging with a layer of faint air current, and the smell of blood in the air could not get close to him. 7th grade spiritual stratagem robe. Who is this person? Nie Tian was quite surprised. He could see that this person was actually wearing a 7th grade spiritual stratagem robe. It was this robe that prevented the smell of blood from touching him. In the 3,000 small worlds, there was absolutely no one who could create a 7th grade spiritual stratagem robe. So there was only one possibility, This person was not from the 3,000 small worlds. White-haired fellow, what is your name? The person raised his eyebrows and locked his gaze on Nye Tian with an arrogant expression. What's the matter? Nye Tian replied indifferently. The person sized up Nye Tian, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Then, he smiled playfully and said, I am just very curious. How can a person from the lower worlds like you condense such a terrifying sword will? Also, your strength is not bad. You are actually at the 4th tier of the spirit wheel. Your name is now qualified for me to know. Nye Tian shook his head slightly and did not deny it. This person said that Nye Tian was from the lower worlds right off the bat. This undoubtedly meant that he was from the middle world or the upper world. No wonder he was so strong and had a 7th grade spiritual stratagem robe. This person did not look like he was from the land of sanguinity. Moreover, he seemed to have just arrived at the land of sanguinity. Yi Futian did not know why he was here. Nye Tian glanced at him. He did not want to talk nonsense with him anymore and turned to leave. Even if he was from the Sumer world, Nye Tian did not care. If he put away his arrogance and asked nicely, perhaps Nye Tian would still answer him. But now there was no need to answer at all. The person's handsome face froze slightly. A cold, murderous intent suddenly flashed in his eyes. He shouted arrogantly, Brat, I am talking to you. Did you not hear me? Almost at the same time, a gush of sword will gushed out of his body and directly attacked Nye Tian. He was an ancient martial art practitioner from the Sumer world, but he was ignored by an ancient martial art practitioner from the lower world. How could he not be angry? The sharp sword will whizzed out, and the surrounding space actually froze in an instant. An ear-piercing sword hum sounded in the air, and a terrifying sword aura instantly bloomed. Sword force! Nye Tian's expression changed slightly. Then, the corner of his mouth curled up strangely. He did not expect that the other party was also a swordsman, and a swordsman with sword force at that. The strength of the 8th tier of the spirit wheel and the realm of sword force. This talent was indeed amazing. But in Nye Tian's eyes it was far from enough. Chapter 692. In the void, a terrifying sword essence whizzed out, carrying a sharp killing intent, and charged toward Nye Tian. This person actually wanted to kill Nye Tian without saying a word. Are all warriors from the Sumer world as arrogant as you? Feeling the killing intent coming toward him, Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. His body shook, and a layer of dark blue light lit up his body. The sword essence bombarded him, but it was actually absorbed by the layer of blue light. This person's sword essence was very strong, but it was too weak for Nye Tian. He could easily absorb this sword essence with just the heavenly water pole yuan armor. It was very unusual for a warrior from the Sumer world to suddenly appear in the 3,000 small world. Before Nye Tian figured out this person's identity, he didn't dare to act rashly. Brat you! The person's sword didn't hurt Nye Tian at all. Instead, he was humiliated by Nye Tian. His face suddenly became extremely embarrassed, and even his neck turned red. I'll kill you! He flew into a rage out of humiliation. A long sword appeared in his hand, and the sword light was dazzling. He actually wanted to attack again. Nye Tian furrowed his brows. He could tolerate this person once, but he would not allow it to happen a second time. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. If this guy really didn't know what was good for him, Nye Tian would definitely not be polite anymore. Xing Kong, stop. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in the void. Immediately, a middle-aged man in white appeared. He was tall and very elegant. Teacher. Xing Kong immediately put away his long sword when the middle-aged man in white appeared. He was very respectful. Teacher? Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. He looked at the middle-aged man and used his divine sense to probe, but it seemed to be a bottomless ocean, which surprised him. Even with his mind power, he couldn't sense this person's strength. This undoubtedly meant that the other party was very likely a Heavenly Evolution Realm warrior. A Heavenly Evolution Realm warrior couldn't possibly appear in the 3,000 small world. This also proved that Xing Kong didn't lie. They were from the upper world of the 3,000 small worlds, the Sumer world. It was strange for two people from the Sumer realm to suddenly appear in the 3,000 lesser realms. The middle-aged man swept his gaze across Nie Tian and the others. There was an unconcealable astonishment in his eyes. He never thought that he would meet such powerful people when he had just arrived in the 3,000 small world. "You're very strong." At this moment, another figure descended from the sky and landed beside the middle-aged man. It was a young man in his 20s. The man's gaze was fixed on Nie Tian from beginning to end. His eyes were a little strange as he said directly, "Your sword intent is very strong. This is the most terrifying sword intent I've ever seen." Nie Tian's gaze couldn't help but tremble when he saw the man who had suddenly appeared. The latter was actually a swordsman at the sword spirit stage. This person was only about 20 years old, but his sword Dao strength had actually reached the sword spirit. It was truly terrifying. This kind of sword Dao talent was extremely shocking. One must know that even the current Nie Tian was only at the sword form realm. If the person before him could continue to grow, he would definitely become an expert at the pinnacle of the sword Dao. However, this person's eyes were very cold. There was a sense of coldness and ruthlessness in them. There was also a hint of killing intent. "You're from the Sumeru world?" Nie Tian's gaze darkened slightly as he asked indifferently. "Yes." The middle-aged man nodded slightly. He didn't have the slightest bit of arrogance. Instead, he smiled and said, "My name is Sun Hai. This is my disciple, Xing Kong. This is my junior, Sikong Wuji. Xing Kong offended your excellency just now, thank you for your leniency." With that, Sun Hai looked at Xing Kong and said in a deep voice, "Xing Kong, apologize to this young master." Xing Kong was stunned on the spot. His mouth was wide open, and he couldn't say a word for a long time. He was still thinking about Sun Hai's words. What did Nie Tian mean by showing mercy just now? Could it be that Nie Tian's strength was above Xing Kang's? He, Xing Kong, was a warrior at the 8th tier of the Divine Wheel and a swordsman with sword momentum. How could he lose to someone from the lower worlds? "Xing Kong, you don't have to think about it anymore. His combat ability is indeed above yours. If you were to fight him head-on, you wouldn't even be able to take one strike from him." Just as Xing Kong was racking his brains to think, Sikong Wuji suddenly spoke. His voice was cold, and his expression was cold. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Nie Tian's gaze froze. Xing Kong was in his 20s and was Sun Hai's disciple. However, Sikong Wuji was also in his 20s and was actually Sun Hai's junior. This relationship was a little strange. Xing Kang's expression became even uglier. He glanced at Sikong Wuji. Although his eyes were filled with unwillingness, he still took a step forward and walked in front of Nie Tian. He said in a deep voice, "I'm sorry for what happened just now." Nie Tian smiled faintly. Since Xing Kong had already apologized, there was no need for him to continue pestering him. He had already discovered that Xing Kong didn't care much about Sun Hai's words, but he was very afraid of Sikong Wuji. It seemed that in his eyes, Sikong Wuji, this junior uncle, was more dignified than Sun Hai. "May I know your name, Your Excellency?" Sun Hai's face was kind, but there was a hidden meaning in his eyes. "My name is Nie Tian." Nie Tian nodded slightly, and the people around him also said their names. Sun Hai nodded slightly, but he was quite surprised in his heart. He didn't expect that there was such a powerful person in the 3,000 small worlds, especially Tang Hao, who gave him a feeling that he was not weaker than him. "Mr. Sun Hai, you are martial artists from the Sumeru world. Why did you come to the 3,000 small worlds?" Nie Tian didn't want to talk nonsense, so he asked directly. "Well, Sun Hai hesitated. He didn't want to explain his purpose of coming. To catch someone. Sikong Wuji didn't care about anything, so he said directly. To catch someone. Nie Tian looked at Sikong Wuji and asked directly. Sikong Wuji's face was cold. He said indifferently, "It's none of your business." Nie Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. Sikong Wuji was right. They were just strangers who met by chance. He had no reason to care about other people's business. After saying that, Sikong Wuji's figure flickered and directly left. Sun Hai was slightly embarrassed. He said, "Young Master Nie, please don't mind him. My junior brother didn't mean to hurt you. That's just his temper." In fact, Sikong Wuji's attitude towards Nie Tian could be considered good. Normally, he wouldn't even bother to talk to others. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He didn't care about it. Without staying any longer, Nie Tian said goodbye to Sun Hai and left immediately. Sun Hai looked at the backs of Nie Tian and the others, and his eyebrows slowly furrowed. At this time, Sikong Wuji's figure appeared again. "Uncle Sikong, you just said that guy's sword intent is the most terrifying sword intent you have ever seen. Is that true?" Xing Kong suddenly remembered what Sikong Wuji had said and couldn't help but ask. "Yes." Sikong Wuji nodded indifferently. Xing Kong was stunned for a moment and then asked again, "Is his sword intent stronger than your innate sword intent?" "Yes." Sikong Wuji nodded again. At this time, Sun Hai couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect Sikong Wuji to admit that his sword intent was inferior to others. His sword intent was comparable to the innate sword intent. "Junior brother, how is Nie Tian's sword intent compared to the Sky Sword ancestors?" Sun Hai suddenly thought of something and asked in horror. Sikong Wuji's cold face finally showed a trace of expression. He frowned and said in a deep voice, "If the ancestor suppressed his sword principle to the same level as Nie Tian, he definitely wouldn't be a match for Nie Tian." Chapter 693. The closer they got to the center of the Land of Blood massacre, the thicker the smell of blood became. "Nie Tian, I can only bring you up to here." Ruoyu coughed dryly. Her eyes were filled with reluctance, but there was nothing she could do. The smell of blood had a stimulating effect on the blood seal. If they went any further, he would not be able to withstand the blood seal. "Okay." Nie Tian nodded. He turned to look at Tawny and said, "Miss Li, please take care of him. I will definitely get the Red Lotus demonic essence back for you." Hu Shaoli agreed and didn't stay any longer. She immediately left with Ruoyu. The next battle would be extremely cruel. Even if Ruoyu and Tawny stayed, they would not be of much help. Instead, they would become a burden. Nie Tian, Tang Hao, and Elder Yi continued to move forward. After a while, they felt that the air around them was filled with the smell of blood. It was as if they were in a swamp, and breathing gradually became difficult. Nie Tian locked his eyes and tensed up. He did not know what kind of enemy they would encounter next. At that moment, Nie Tian sensed something and shouted, "Watch out!" Swoosh! The next moment, a black light surged out violently. The Reaper's chain. Nie Tian could see clearly that it was the Reaper's chain that suddenly attacked them. On the Reaper's chain, the power of the demon sealing curse surged, and the air was filled with a sinister and strange aura. Break! Elder Yi took a step forward and released a terrifying knife will. He slashed down with the reverse blade of dark essence. Bang! A dazzling knife light exploded in the air, and the Reaper's chain was broken. Old Man Yi was now at the 7th tier of the Divine Wheel and had reached the soul of the Blade Realm. He was just one step away from comprehending the profound meaning of the blade. Even an ordinary 8th tier Divine Wheel ancient martial art practitioner might not be able to withstand the power of his blade. The Reaper's chain had chained Elder Yi for 30 or 40 years, and he hated it to the bone. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Following that, the sound of something breaking through the air sounded. In the air, countless chains surged over like a group of dancing snakes, and the smell of blood in the air became even stronger. Nye Tian and Elder Ye's eyes narrowed as they attacked at the same time. Their swords and sabers joined hands, and resplendent saber lights and sword shadows blossomed in the air. Walala! The sound of iron chains breaking rang out. The endless death god's chains were shattered by Nye Tian and Elder Ye's joint attack. These death god's chains were even weaker than the 4 netherworld ghosts. They weren't even worth mentioning. Yugui, get out here! Elder Yi roared furiously and slashed down with his saber. The soaring saber light parted the heavy blood mist. The turbid chi waves in the air were pushed to the sides. The space within a few thousand meters shook violently. Nye Tian was shocked. The strength of the saber soul was indeed terrifying. Let's charge! Nye Tian roared. They had already been exposed, so there was no point in hiding anymore. Kill! At that moment, the shouts of killing could be heard. Hundreds of Shui-Tu guards swarmed towards Nye Tian and the others. Die! Nye Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. He slashed down with his sword Absolute Heaven Slash. The shocking sword light fell from the sky, and the ground was filled with ghostly wails. It was a tragic sight. Elder Yi was even more brutal. His body was like a steel saber, and he directly rushed towards the Shui-Tu guards. He roared, Yugui, do you think these useless soldiers and crab generals can stop us? The 3 of them rushed out of the encirclement of the Shui-Tu guards and ran for a few thousand meters, but they came to a spacious area. Nye Tian felt that the smell of blood was getting thinner, and he was confused. Master, look at the sky! At that moment, the corpse lord's voice was heard from the Chaos Original coffin. Nye Tian suddenly raised his head, and the scene in front of him completely stunned him. A giant blood-colored altar was floating in mid-air. The blood-colored altar was burning with endless flames, like a giant flame array, floating in mid-air, emitting an ancient and solemn aura. The entire altar looked like a giant array, and the dancing flames resembled the runes of the array. At the center of the altar was a strange green liquid. The green liquid was wrapped in endless flames, and it trembled from time to time, causing the entire altar to shake violently. Liquid flame. Nye Tian gulped, and his heart began to race as he sensed the life force within the green liquid. A name appeared in his mind, Nirvana's Sacred Heart. The green liquid was the legendary 8th demonic fire, the Nirvana's Sacred Heart. Nye Tian could tell that the flames burning on the altar were all from the Nirvana Sacred Heart. It was like the beating heart of the altar, ensuring that the altar could continue to exist. The Nirvana Sacred Heart could save Mo Rushi. How could Nye Tian not be excited? Most importantly, the Nirvana Sacred Heart was different from other demonic fires. It did not have any destructive power, only a powerful life force. In other words, Nye Tian could directly obtain the Nirvana Sacred Heart. After calming himself down, Nye Tian looked around, but there was no one around. This was very strange. The blood-colored altar, which could resurrect those in the land of sanguinity, was actually unguarded? I can't care too much. I'll give it a try first. Nye Tian's gaze became passionate, and he could not resist the temptation of the Nirvana Sacred Heart. He took a step forward, and his figure soared into the sky, heading straight for the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Teacher! Mr. Nye. Tang Hao and Elder Yi saw Nye Tian suddenly rushing out, and they simultaneously exclaimed. The flame altar was very strange, and Nye Tian was actually rushing over. Wasn't he seeking death? Nye Tian did not care. His figure moved like the wind, and he instantly passed through the layers of flames, reaching out his hand to grab the Nirvana Sacred Heart. You're courting death. Just when he was about to grab the Nirvana Sacred Heart, a strange voice suddenly rang out. Shortly after, a sharp claw appeared in the air, flickering with cold light, and directly struck at Nye Tian. Nye Tian's gaze trembled, and he tilted his body slightly. However, he was still injured by the sharp edge of the claw, and 3 frightening wounds appeared on his right arm. Blood flowed continuously. In the next moment, a coffin appeared in the void, floating in midair, releasing a sinister and strange aura. Nye Tian stabilized his body, and he was quite surprised. He actually did not notice the existence of this person just now. Kid, something like the Nirvana Sacred Heart is not something you can touch. The coffin shook a little, and a ghostly voice came out, extremely ear-piercing. Stop acting mysterious, get out here. Nye Tian's gaze slightly tightened, and then he immediately shouted coldly, slashing down with his sword. Sword intent erupted from his entire body, and thunder roared in the air. A huge sword shadow suddenly appeared, slashing at the coffin like a mountain. A strange voice came from the coffin, and then it shook violently. The coffin's lid opened, and a figure suddenly came out. Another sharp claw appeared in the void. Boom! The sword shadow and the sharp claw collided. Nye Tian's figure retreated a few steps, and he stabilized his body. He looked at the person who came out of the coffin, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. It really is you. Chapter 694. In the air, a skinny old man appeared in front of Nye Tian. He looked haggard like a mummy. Even his body released a cold aura, as if he had just crawled out of a graveyard. You know me. Sir Xuetu's skinny face made a frightening expression. He was very surprised. Nye Tianling smiled coldly and said, A few days ago, Yu Gui hired 6 mummies to set up the Severing Blood Seal in Sumi Ling capital. You were one of them. Sir Xuetu frowned and said, You didn't die. If Nye Tian had been at the Sumi martial meet that day, he should have been dead. Why was he still alive? Yu Gui hasn't told you yet. Not only am I not dead, everyone in the Sumi martial meet is not dead. Nye Tian smiled faintly. Cold disdain flashed in his eyes. Yu Gui, you piece of trash. Sir Xuetu's skinny face stiffened. Then, a cold look flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, You actually dared to kill your way into the land of bloody massacre. But since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Sir Xuetu did not know who Nye Tian was, but he knew that he could not let Nye Tian leave alive. You? Nye Tianling smiled coldly. He had already sensed that Sir Xuetu's strength was at the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel, but his aura was a little weak. It seemed that he had not fully recovered from leaving the land of bloody massacre a few days ago. Arrogant! Sir Xuetu screamed and slapped out with his palm. The air suddenly shook, and the surrounding nirvana flames were dispersed. Nye Tian frowned slightly, but he did not dodge. Instead, he stabbed out with his sword, and a terrifying sword will instantly bloomed. Boom! The two of them clashed at close range, and the space shook violently. Even the Nirvana Sacred Heart was affected. Waves of violent flames were released, but they did not hurt anyone. Instead, they had a very good healing effect. This was the magic of the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Its powerful vitality could even bring the dead back to life. Tang Hao and Elder Yi watched from below. They were eager to help Nye Tian. Be careful! However, at that moment, Elder Yi suddenly roared, turned around, and slashed at Tang Hao. The saber intent was ferocious and domineering, and the dazzling saber radiance released the sharpest killing intent. Boom! In the void, a figure appeared like a ghost. There was a violent roar, and the blade light seemed to have encountered a huge obstruction. It stagnated in the void for a moment, and then with a groan, a pool of blood appeared on the ground. The ghostly figure disappeared in an instant. It's Nether Ghost. Tang Hao's gaze trembled violently. He had been too concerned with Nye Tian's battle just now and hadn't noticed that the Nether Ghost was already lurking beside him. If not for Elder Ye's timely discovery, the Nether Ghost's sneak attack would have been a success, and he would have been seriously injured. My good brother, your sword Dao has improved again. Shouldn't you thank me for giving you the Grim Reaper's chains back then? The Nether Ghost's voice rang out in the air, but it was very strange. It seemed to be coming from all directions, and it was impossible to find the source of the voice. Nether Ghost. When Elder Yeskar was touched, his face became ferocious. He said in a cold voice, "After so many years, you still only know how to stab people in the back? I Yilinyun am here. Do you dare to fight me?" The roar shook the heavens and earth. Waves of saber intent permeated the air, forming a large invisible net that covered the surroundings. The realm of the sword soul allowed Elder Yi to have a stronger perception. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to detect the Nether Ghost's existence. The large net formed by the saber intent did not detect the Nether Ghost's hiding place. Tang Hao and Elder Yi looked at each other and nodded at the same time. Their figures directly flew up to help Nietian. Honorable Venerables, the map of the spiritual energy ley lines is with Nietian. I have already brought him to you. As for whether you can keep him here, it will depend on your own abilities. The Nether Ghost's voice rang out again, and then disappeared without a trace. This guy was very cunning. He actually chose to watch the battle. 6 Honorable Venerables? Nietian was slightly stunned and his nerves tightened. Just as he finished speaking, the void suddenly shook, and another 5 coffins appeared. Kill him first. Seeing that the situation was not good, Nietian roared and stabbed out with his sword. The power of the 3rd level of sword intent instantly burst out, and thunder and lightning appeared in the sky, pressing towards Venerable Shui Tuesday. The sword's shadow was like a mountain, and the sword chi was like the sea. Venerable Shui Tu felt a mighty force, and his face turned pale. He wanted to escape, but he was shocked to find that the space around him was frozen, and he couldn't move at all. Die. Seeing this, Elder Yi slashed down with his saber. The bright saber light fell, and blood splattered. The first Venerable Shui Tu was dead. A surprised voice came from the 5 coffins at the same time, and then the coffins opened. 5 skinny old men appeared, and their faces were no different from the previous person, and they all looked like dried corpses. These 5 people were the people who had appeared at the Meru martial meet. Including the one who had just died, there were exactly 6 of them. The 5 people looked at Nietian and the others with extremely gloomy eyes, and they couldn't wait to tear them to pieces. Tang Hao, get rid of them, Nietianling said coldly. Then, he raised his head and looked at the Nirvana Sacred Heart in the sky, and his eyes flickered with passion. These 6 old men were only honorables of the land of Sanguinity. Previously, he heard from Raindrop that the land of Sanguinity had 2 more honorables. If those 2 honorables were here, it would not be good. Yes, Tang Hao replied, and his body released a gloomy chill. The myriad calamity ghost eye was activated again. Nietian no longer cared about Venerable Shui Tuesday. He fiercely stepped on the ground, and his figure flew again, rushing towards the Nirvana Sacred Heart. When the 5 honorables saw Nietian's action, they were all shocked, and immediately attacked Nietian. Tang Hao and Elder Yi also attacked at the same time, blocking the 5 people. Nietian's figure sped up, and when he was only a few meters away from the Nirvana Sacred Heart, a black chi suddenly whistled past and swept the Nirvana Sacred Heart away. Nietian, what exactly is this altar flame? Why are you risking your life for it? In the next moment, Yu Gui's voice was heard, and it carried a thick sense of ridicule. Bastard! Nietian had almost obtained the Nirvana Sacred Heart, but Yu Gui had beaten him to it. One could imagine the frustration in his heart. More importantly, Yu Gui had been concealing his figure. Even with Nietian's perception, he could not sense his existence. It was very troublesome. If he had known earlier, he would have brought Jean de Bao along. His 3,000 demon god seals was even stronger than the rainbow pupils. Yu Gui, how dare you steal the Nirvana Sacred Heart? Not only was Nietian angry, but the 5 honorables of the land of Sanguinity were even more furious. Humph! Yu Gui laughed sinisterly and said, Honorables, I have worked for the land of Sanguinity for so many years. Just take the Nirvana Sacred Heart as my reward for all these years. I believe you will not object, right? As the sinister laughter faded, Yu Gui's aura disappeared again. You are not allowed to leave. Nie Tian roared. The Nirvana Sacred Heart was the key to saving Mo Rushi. He could not let Yu Gui take it away. Chapter 695. Nie Tian stabbed out with his sword, and an overwhelming number of sword shadows spread out, filling up the surrounding space of thousands of meters. In an instant, the sword shadows covered the entire sky, and it was extremely dazzling. In the void, a large screen condensed from sword shadows moved at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, Nie Tian's Sword of the Warp and Weft was instantly activated, and the sword screen that followed the movement spread forward. As long as Spirit Ghost had not left, he would be able to sense the latter's existence. Nie Tian estimated that, given Spirit Ghost's temperament, he would definitely not leave. He would lurk on the side and watch the battle between Lord Xuetu and Tang Hao. Sure enough, the sword will around Nie Tian's body surged, and he sensed a blurry black shadow moving at an extremely fast speed. Spirit Ghost, you are still here. Sensing the location of Spirit Ghost, Nie Tian did not hesitate. The sword will in his body soared to the extreme, and the Sword of the Warp and Weft locked on to Spirit Ghost. Huh! In the void, a surprised voice sounded. Spirit Ghost obviously did not expect that Nie Tian could actually detect his existence. Brat, since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Spirit Ghost no longer hid his figure and walked out of the void. No matter what, he was also a warrior in the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel. Even if he was not good at fighting head-on, he was still confident that he could defeat Nie Tian, who was only in the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel. Spirit Ghost's figure appeared. His face was a little thin, and his eyes were like the abyss, revealing a suffocating feeling that made people feel despair. Spirit Ghost was the pavilion master of Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion and the only assassin at the Black Emperor level in Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion. How strong was he exactly? In fact, in a one-on-one fight, even Tang Hao might not be a match for Spirit Ghost. The most terrifying thing about Spirit Ghost was that he could hide. If not for Elder Yi just now, Tang Hao would have been seriously injured by Spirit Ghost. Spirit Ghost raised his hand and a majestic black chi filled the void, directly shattering the sword shadow in the air. Huh! Nie Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. The strength of Spirit Ghost was beyond his expectations. Judging from the palm just now, the ghost was much stronger than Mou, and even stronger than Mo Zhaojing. Perhaps, in the entire 3,000 small worlds, only Tang Hao could fight him head-on. Brat, you killed my son. Today, I will avenge him. Yu Gui said calmly. Although he was avenging his son, there was no anger on his face. In fact, there was no expression on his face. It was as if taking revenge was something that didn't matter to him. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. There was no fear on his face. Instead, there was a hint of a smile. Although Nether Ghost was very strong, it was not enough to make Nie Tian afraid. The current Nie Tian was strong enough to challenge any Spirit Wheel Realm warrior. Nether Ghost noticed the smile on Nie Tian's face. His eyes narrowed and he sneered. Interesting. You're the only one who isn't afraid in front of this king. However, this was no longer important. In this world, anyone who sees my true face must die. You are no exception. Is that so? Nie Tian smiled calmly, mentally prepared for anything. Yes. The next moment, Nether Ghost's voice fell. At the same time, his figure flickered and directly appeared beside Nie Tian. He was less than 5 meters away from Nie Tian, and a tyrannical palm shot out. A golden light suddenly appeared on Nie Tian's body, and he subconsciously activated the dragon scale shield. Crack! Nether Ghost's palm heavily hit the dragon scale shield. With a crisp sound, the shield directly collapsed. Nie Tian's figure flew out, drawing a line of blood in the air. After flying for dozens of meters, the proud sword wings appeared on Nie Tian's back. With a flap of the wings, his figure stopped. Puff! Nye Tian spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. He didn't expect Netherghost's move to be so strange. He moved almost instantaneously, as if he was tearing space apart. Not dead? While Nye Tian was surprised, Netherghost was even more surprised. He initially thought that Nye Tian would definitely die from the palm, but he didn't expect Nye Tian to still be alive with only minor injuries. The dragon scale chi in Nye Tian's body was strengthened by the 9-star dragon vein, and it wasn't any weaker than the heavenly water armor. More importantly, the dragon scale chi didn't require any time to react. As long as he was in danger, it would automatically activate. If it wasn't for the dragon scale shield, Nye Tian's body would have been penetrated by the palm. Nye Tian's eyes flickered slightly. Without hesitation, he performed a hand seal, and the force of heaven and earth suddenly changed. Nye Tian was going to use the 3 seals of the divine god of battle. The force of heaven and earth instantly changed. Boundless yuan force of heaven and earth surged around Nye Tian and surged into his body. Netherghost sensed that something was wrong. His eyes flickered with a strange light and he smiled cold. "You're not strong enough, so you want to borrow the force of heaven and earth? I won't let you have your way." Following his words, a boundless black aura burst out from Netherghost's body. The black aura was the same as the energy in the bodies of the Yuming elders. It was the netherworld ghostly chi, but his aura was a lot stronger than the Yuming elders. The netherworld ghostly chi howled in the air. Under the dark clouds, it felt like countless ferocious ghosts were roaring, resulting in a terrifying sight. Netherghost was using the netherworld ghostly chi to disrupt the force of heaven and earth, preventing Nye Tian from absorbing the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth. "Do you think you can stop me?" Nye Tian's pupils contracted slightly. His eyes flickered with a vicious look as he let out a roar. His aura skyrocketed, and a raging vortex appeared around him, absorbing the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth crazily. This time, not only was he going to absorb the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth, but he was also going to absorb the netherworld ghostly chi from Netherghost. "Netherworld ghostly chi, how dare you absorb it? You're courting death!" Netherghost roared. The netherworld ghostly chi was incomparably violent. Nye Tian actually dared to directly absorb it. This was absolutely suicide. But Nye Tian seemed to have gone mad. The domain origin array within his body rumbled, and a stream of netherworld ghostly chi rushed into his body. However, it was directly swallowed by the power of the stars and turned into Nye Tian's origin force. The netherworld ghostly chi released by netherworld ghostly chi was simply providing Nye Tian with origin force. A moment later, Nye Tian's aura soared to the extreme. A vast power gradually condensed in the void, like a giant beast that could swallow the heavens. Netherghost suddenly felt something was wrong. His eyes trembled. Why was Nye Tian absorbing so much netherworld ghostly chi and yet nothing happened to him? How is this possible? How is this possible? For the first time, netherworld ghostly chi stiffened. The netherworld ghostly chi was refined from the souls of tens of thousands of martial artists. It was violent and bloody. If an ordinary martial artist were to absorb just a little, their meridians would be thrown into chaos and their body would explode. But after Nye Tian absorbed the netherworld ghostly chi, not only did nothing happen, but his aura became even stronger. How was this possible? Netherworld ghostly chi, do you really think I'm afraid of the netherworld ghostly chi? At this time, Nye Tian's cold and mocking voice sounded out. If I was afraid of the netherworld ghostly chi, how could I have killed old Yuan Ming? A mighty voice sounded out. Nye Tian's aura was as vast as a mountain. Chapter 696. Nye Tian stood proudly in the air. His eyes were cold and emotionless. The soul-severing heavenly seal, the supreme seal of the 3 seals of the divine god of battle, was unleashed once again, causing the sky to tremble and the heavens and earth to change color. What a terrifying martial skill! Nether Ghost's eyes widened as his heart skipped a beat. For the first time, his eyes were filled with fear, but it was only for a fleeting moment before it was replaced by a ruthless look. Nye Tion, you're strong indeed, but it's not enough to kill me. Nether Ghost sneered and raised his arm. A cloud of black chi appeared and formed a giant snake that was a few hundred meters long in the air. It bared its fangs and emitted an eerie aura. Nye Tion, you should be proud that you're able to force me to use my ghostly nether snake even in death. The ghostly nether snake opened its mouth and let out an ear-piercing shriek. Then, its giant body rolled into the sky and charged toward the soul-severing heavenly seal. Boom! The ghostly nether snake and the soul-severing heavenly seal collided in midair, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion. The surrounding dark clouds gathered and formed a giant mushroom cloud that soared into the sky. How powerful! Tang Hao and the others were stunned when they saw the scene from a few thousand meters away. It seemed that Nye Tion had yet to display his true strength at the Meru martial gathering. The mushroom cloud that soared into the sky only dissipated after a long time. Nye Tion's figure was knocked a few dozen meters back due to the tremendous impact. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. At that moment, the cloud of black chi reappeared in the sky, and the ghostly nether snake's figure gradually took shape. The ghostly nether snake was unharmed after blocking the soul-severing heavenly seal. What a strange strength! Nye Tion raised his head and looked at the giant snake in the sky. His eyes could not help but tremble. Since Nether Ghost was the pavilion master of the Ling Xian Heavenly Pavilion, he was ruthless and cunning. It went without saying that he had many tricks up his sleeve. Nye Tion didn't expect a soul-severing heavenly seal to be able to kill the Nether Ghost, but the latter receiving the heavenly seal so easily surprised him. The ghostly nether snake's body rolled, and as it flicked its tongue, the dark clouds in the sky surged. The netherworld ghost chi in the air became more and more condensed, and the space seemed to be frozen. Nye Tion, I've said it before. I'll let you keep the demonic stream sword for now. Now, it's time to return it to me. Prepare to die. Nether Ghost's figure flickered, and he stepped on the Nether Ghost snake's huge head. He was like a demon god descending to the mortal world as he charged over. The surrounding space was instantly tightened, and a bloody aura rolled over, covering the sky and earth. Nye Tion's eyes trembled slightly. He activated the space of his divine wheel and the sword of warp and weft at the same time. His entire body was like a sharp sword, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He flapped his wings slightly and slashed out forcefully with the sword of absolute heaven slash. A terrifying sword will whizzed out, raging flames burning the sea. As the sword will surged out, the star soul steel in Nye Tion's body sensed it. The power of the star soul was stimulated, and an endless amount of star power gushed out and merged with the sword will. In the sky, a huge flaming sword appeared. A terrifying sword will was on the inside, and raging flames on the outside. You're courting death. When Nether Ghost saw that Nye Tion did not dodge and actually chose to fight him head-on, his face suddenly turned cold. He roared furiously, "Ghostly Nether Snake, kill him!" As he roared, the ghostly Nether Snake opened its huge mouth, and a strange black light shot out from between its two fangs. Poison! Nye Tion felt a strong and pungent smell, which made him frown. The black light actually contained an extremely strong poisonous gas. Boom! In the sky, the huge flaming sword and the poisonous black light collided with a loud bang. Immediately, the flames spread, and the fiery light shot up into the sky. In the endless fiery light, a black gas broke through the sky like the wind and lightning. Pooh! Without giving Nye Tion any time to react, the sound of flesh being pierced rang out. Blood gushed out from Nye Tion's shoulder. The intense pain didn't cause Nye Tion to cry out, but a strange energy seeped into his body through the wound, causing him to frown as his countenance sank. Nye Tion, you've been poisoned by my netherworld corpse poison. Obediently wait for your death. Nether Ghost stood on top of the ghostly nether snake, laughing maniacally. He couldn't wait to see the scene of Nyetian dying. As the netherworld corpse poison entered his body, the skin around Nyetian's wound instantly turned black. He examined his body and discovered that all the meridians in his body had been infected by the corpse poison. The toxicity of the corpse poison was extremely strong, beyond imagination. In the blink of an eye, it directly invaded all the meridians in Nyetian's 4 limbs. Roar! Next, the corpse poison chi touched the 9 dragon-shaped energy meridians, and an intense dragon roar came from Nyetian's body. In the next moment, an unbelievable scene appeared. 9 illusory dragon shadows suddenly surged out from the 9 dragon-shaped energy meridians. The dragon shadows surged in all the meridians in his 4 limbs and directly swallowed the corpse poison. Such a strong dragon meridian! Seeing this scene, even Nyetian himself was stunned. He could feel that the netherworld corpse poison was stronger than ordinary 7th-grade poison pills, but it was directly swallowed by the dragon-shaped energy meridians. It was simply too terrifying. It seemed like the 9-star dragon meridian physique not only gave Nyetian a very strong recovery ability, but also allowed him to ignore all kinds of poison. It was very abnormal. In the next moment, Nyetian's body shook, and a turbid gas was dispersed. Even the wound on his shoulder began to heal slowly. You're fine? That's impossible. Yugue's cold eyes gradually became surprised. Originally, he had been waiting to see the scene of Nyetian being tortured to death by the corpse poison. He even intended to control Nyetian and make the latter his subordinate. Who would have thought that Nyetian would be completely fine? This was simply impossible for Yugue. Even a peak spirit wheel warrior couldn't withstand the netherworld corpse poison, unless the Heaven Evolution Realm warrior's true meaning of heaven could resist the corpse poison. However, Nyetian was clearly only a 4th-tier spirit wheel warrior. How could his martial body compare to a Heaven Evolution Realm warrior's? All of this was too unbelievable. A trace of fear appeared in your eyes again. Nyetian expelled the corpse poison from his body and locked his eyes firmly on you. Since the other party had taken the Nirvana Sacred Heart, he would never let him escape. However, your strength exceeded Nyetian's expectations, which made him much more cautious. Nyetian. Yugue looked at Nyetian and his eyes flickered. He said, "Don't you want the altar fire? I'm willing to trade with you. Give me the spiritual vein map, and I'll give you the altar fire. How about that?" The altar fire? Nyetianling sneered. Yugue didn't know that he had the Nirvana Sacred Heart, the 8th demonic fire, nor did he know the power of the Nirvana Sacred Heart. If he knew that as long as he integrated with the Nirvana Sacred Heart, he would almost have an immortal body, then he wouldn't have traded with Nyetian. Seeing that Nyetian seemed to be tempted, Yugue shouted, "How about it? Do you want to trade?" Chapter 697. You don't want to trade? Yugue was slightly surprised. He didn't expect Nyetian to refuse so readily. Nyetian suddenly raised the corner of his mouth and sneered. "Yugue, do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child? With your means, will you trade with me? Even if I hand over the map, you won't give me the altar fire." Yugue was vicious. Now that he had the upper hand, and he had unpredictable means of hiding, Nyetian couldn't be at ease to make a deal with such a person. Even if Yugue really wanted to trade with him, he would definitely follow him. Nyetian didn't want an invisible enemy to follow him every day. Therefore, he only had one thought for Yugue: kill! Only by killing Yugue would Nyetian be at ease. Oh! Nether Ghost's eyes widened and his face gradually grew cold. Then, he smiled coldly and said, "Nyetian, you're indeed a tough opponent." He turned around and looked into the distance. Tang Hao and Yi Linyun were fighting against the 5 blood slaughter lords. The former 2 obviously had the upper hand. It wouldn't be long before the 5 blood slaughter lords lost their lives. Damn it! Why haven't the 2 high lords arrived yet? Yugoi cursed in his heart. The blood-colored altar had been invaded, but only the 6 venerables guarding the altar had appeared. The 2 high lords of the land of bloody massacre hadn't appeared. This was very strange. Nie Tian had the same question in his heart. He was now convinced that the people from the land of bloody massacre must have come from the Shumi world. The Blood Slaughter Lord's strength was already at the 9th tier of the Divine Wheel, so the Blood Slaughter Lord's strength must be at the Heavenly Evolution realm. If the 6 venerables hadn't left the land of bloody massacre a few days ago and hadn't fully recovered their strength, Tang Hao and Elder Yi might not be their match. Nie Tian hadn't used the forbidden move of the Proud Sword Incantation and the Heaven Shrouding Totem because he wanted to deal with the 2 High Lords. What surprised him was that the 2 High Lords hadn't appeared yet. Could it be? Suddenly, Nie Tian thought of something and his face stiffened. Sun Hai and Sikong Wuji are here to catch the 2 High Lords? The 2 supremacies came from the Shumi world, Sun Hai and the others also came from the Shumi world, and Sikong Wuji said that they were here to capture someone. Who would they capture? It could only be those 2 High Lords. Otherwise, who would be worthy of the Sumer world's martial artists personally coming to the 3,000 small worlds? With this thought in mind, Nie Tian was even more certain that the reason why the 2 reverends did not come was because they had encountered Sikong Wuji and the others. A cold smile appeared at the corner of Nie Tian's mouth. Nether Ghost, your 2 masters won't show up. You're going to die beyond the shadow of a doubt today. He took a step forward in midair, his aura threatening. Yugoi was stunned. Seeing how confident Nie Tian was, his heart couldn't help but sink. Could it be that Nie Tian had helpers that were entangled with the 2 High Lords? Thinking of this, Yugui's heart trembled slightly, and he decisively made a decision. Cut the Gordian knot and quickly get rid of Nie Tian. Nie Tian did not look like he was bluffing. If he waited until Tang Hao and Elder Yi killed the 5 venerables, it would be troublesome. Thinking of this, Yugui no longer hesitated. His figure flashed, and a mass of black light gushed out. In the void, another netherworld ghost snake appeared. Seeing this scene, Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly. He didn't expect that not only he had reserved his strength, but also Yugui had. Very well, it seems that the real battle has just begun. Nie Tian faintly smiled. Sword intent surged out from his whole body, and several blood-red lights shot out from his body. At this moment, he no longer had any scruples. In the void, endless sword chi filled the air. The swordsman's blood chi surged out, and the surging sword intent became cold and bloody. Proud sword art, forbidden move, first style of the 3 swords of annihilation, weeping blood soul. Nie Tian proudly stood in the void, and his majestic voice resounded. As his voice fell, a huge blood-red sword shadow that was hundreds of meters long suddenly pressed down. It was majestic and powerful, as if it could destroy and annihilate everything. So strong. Yugui looked at the huge sword shadow pressing down on his head, and his heart trembled slightly. His netherworld ghost snake seemed to be suppressed at this moment. The netherworld ghost snake was condensed from the strongest netherworld ghost chi and Yugui's dual snake origin spirits, but it was unexpectedly suppressed by Nie Tian's sword. The sword intent in that blood-red sword shadow was unexpectedly overbearing to such an extent. Netherworld ghost snakes, kill for me! Yugui roared in a deep voice. The 2 snakes danced wildly and actually intertwined together. Their bodies fused together, turning into a double-headed snake. The air released a cold chill, and the netherworld ghost chi became even thicker. 2 sharp black chi blades broke through the air and attacked at an extremely fast speed. Slash! Nie Tian was fearless. He shouted in a deep voice, and the horrifying aura of the blood-red sword shadow instantly erupted. The earth-shattering sword had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Boom! Boom! There was a violent explosion, and the horrifying sword intent filled the air. Among the surging sword chi, a sword shadow suddenly appeared and pressed down on the double-headed snake. Oh no! Yugui was shocked and secretly trembled. He wanted to withdraw the netherworld ghost snakes, but it was too late. Hiss! Hiss! Two miserable screams sounded, and the netherworld ghost snakes turned into two masses of black chi, annihilated by the blood-red sword shadow. Weeping Blood Soul was a forbidden move. The ultimate sword intent contained in the swordsman's blood chi had a strong suppressive force against the netherworld ghost chi. Moreover, the thunderbolt sword intent that Nye Tian comprehended from the 9-star dragon vein also had a considerable suppressive force against the netherworld ghost chi, which was extremely een and evil. Even if Yugui was a warrior in the 9th tier of the divine wheel, he still could not withstand the weeping blood soul. Ah! At the moment when the netherworld ghost snakes were slashed, Yugui screamed, and his body was blasted away by the airwaves. In the void, a blood-red light appeared, and the black figure disappeared again. Nye Tian moved. Although his face was pale, his aura was incomparably fierce, and his eyes flashed with murderous light. Since he had already seriously injured Yugui, how could he let the latter escape? Yugui, you can't escape. A cold voice sounded, and the sky was filled with sword shadows again. Nye Tian's figure was like lightning, and the aurora sword shadows surrounded him within a kilometer. As long as Yugui was within a kilometer of him, he would be detected. Following the bloodstains in the air, Nye Tian's figure was extremely fast. In the next moment, he immediately discovered Yugui's hiding place. The corner of his mouth twitched into a cold smile, and the sword Absolute Heaven Slash suddenly slashed down. This ruthless sword strike was determined to take Yugui's life. Nye Tian, you forced me to do this. In the void, a black figure appeared, and Yugui's figure appeared. His whole body was a bloody mess, but his aura was still not weak. With a shake of his body, two masses of black chi gushed out from behind him, and a pair of black wings that were hundreds of meters long appeared. The wings covered the sky, and a cold aura spread out for a kilometer. Nether Ghost, is this your final move? Nye Tian sensed that the power contained in the black wings was even more terrifying than that of the netherworld ghost snakes, but he still did not retreat. Instead, he sped up again. Chapter 698. The heaven-shrouding totem appeared again, and it directly turned into a huge net that covered the sky and spread toward Yugui. This! Yugui suddenly raised his head and felt a vast and boundless power surging toward him. It gave him a feeling that he could not resist, as if this power was spreading from all directions, and he could not resist it at all. What kind of terrifying power was hidden in Nye Tian's body to be able to release such a huge martial skill? Yugui did not know that this was not a martial skill at all. Even Nye Tian himself did not know what the heaven-shrouding totem was. At the most critical moment, a single word emerged in Yugui's mind. Run! The heaven-shrouding totem made him feel a deep fear. He could not resist it at all, so he could only escape. Unfortunately, the moment the Yugui's wings were about to flap, he was shocked to find that the surrounding space had actually frozen, and a boundless power pressed down on his body, making him suddenly feel a sense of suffocation. The heaven-shrouding totem had once resisted the blood-severing seal of the 6 blood-slaughter venerables. No matter how strong Yugui was, it was impossible for him to be stronger than the 6 blood-slaughter venerables working together. In front of the heaven-shrouding totem, he had no power to fight back. In the next moment, the heaven-shrouding totem fell with a loud bang, directly imprisoning Yugui like a small fish. Yugui's wings flapped a few times, still trying to struggle, but the heaven-shrouding totem suddenly tightened, and his wings directly collapsed. Yugui raised his head in horror, and his eyes were filled with despair. Finally, he could not bear the fear of death, and his knees went soft. He knelt down and begged bitterly, Nye Tian, I beg you, don't kill me. I'm willing to be your slave, be an ant under your feet, be your dog, be your most obedient servant. Don't kill me, don't kill me. At this time, Tang Hao and Elder Yi had already dealt with the 5 venerables. Looking at Yu Gui, who was imprisoned by the heaven-shrouding totem, their eyes revealed a deep contempt. Was he still the pavilion master of Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion? Was he still a martial artist? Was it so important to grovel and linger on while at death's door? Perhaps for some people, living was really important. But for others, living was not important. What was important was to live with dignity. You want to be my dog? You're not qualified. Nie Tian's lips curled up in disdain. As soon as he finished speaking, the killing intent in his eyes intensified. He turned to look at Elder Yi and said, Elder Yi, make your move. Elder Yi had been tortured by the nether ghosts for 30 to 40 years, so the hatred in his heart was definitely even greater. This opportunity to act should be left to him. Elder Yi took a step forward. In addition to contempt, there was also a trace of regret in his eyes. He laughed wildly. Yu Gui, look at you now. You don't look like a martial artist at all. Big Brother Yi, what happened back then was all my fault. Help me plead for leniency, I will definitely repent. Yu Gui looked at Elder Yi with a hint of excitement in his eyes, but before he could finish speaking, a sharp blade light flashed. Blood splattered, and Yu Gui's head was separated from his body. Before he died, Yu Gui's eyes were filled with fear, unwillingness, and humiliation. Elder Yi finished off Yu Gui with a single slash. The regret in his eyes disappeared, and was replaced by the sharpness of a swordsman. Nie Tian retracted the heaven-shrouding totem. His figure moved, and his divine sense swept over Yu Gui. An interspatial ring appeared in his hand. He probed and found the Nirvana Sacred Heart and a crimson ball of light in his palm. It was Tawny's Red Lotus Chi. Nie Tian put away the Nirvana Sacred Heart and Red Lotus Chi. He also put the interspatial ring into his bag. Since Yu Gui was the pavilion master of Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion, he must have a lot of good things. Sir, those 5 people are all dead. Tang Hao took a step forward and thought for a moment. Instead of calling Nie Tian teacher, he called him sir. Let's go. Nie Tian's face was a little pale. He didn't want to stay any longer. Since he had already obtained the Nirvana Sacred Heart and Red Lotus Chi, there was no need to stay any longer. However, just as the 3 of them were about to leave, several figures suddenly descended from the sky. It's them. Nie Tian looked over. It was Sun Hai, Sikong Wuji, and the others. At that moment, apart from Sun Hai, Sikong Wuji, and Xing Kong, there were 2 other people. They were about 30 years old, and they looked fierce and unwilling. Nie Tian sensed the strength of those 2 people. One was at the 2nd level of heavenly evolution, and the other was at the 1st level of heavenly evolution. However, these 2 people's chi meridians were sealed, and they were no different from ordinary people. Nie Tian guessed that these 2 people should be the 2 supremacies of the land of sanguinity. To be able to seal heaven evolution cultivators, the person who applied the seal was at least a level 7 sealer. Sealers were even rarer than alchemists, spirit weapon masters, and spirit formation masters. Ever since Nie Tian had been reborn, he didn't seem to have met a single sealer. Jean de Bao had the 3,000 divine and demon seals, so he could barely be considered half a sealer. Nie Tian estimated that the number of sealers in the entire 3,000 small worlds was definitely less than 5. It's him. In the next moment, Nie Tian's gaze locked onto Sun Hai. He didn't sense Sun Hai's strength earlier, which meant that this person's mental energy was far superior to ordinary people. However, this person's aura was restrained, and he had a gentle temperament. He was different from ordinary cultivators, so this level 7 sealer could only be Sun Hai. A level 7 sealer was the top sealer even in the Meru world. Without a doubt, the force that Sun Hai and the others belonged to was definitely a top force in the Meru world. Young Master Nie Tian, it's you guys. Sun Hai was stunned when he saw Nie Tian's group, then he laughed. Nie Tian nodded slightly, looked at the two supremacies and said, Mr. Sun, the people you want to capture are the two supremacies of the land of sanguinity, right? Supremacies? Sikong Wuji sneered with an arrogant expression and disdainful eyes. He said, the two of them are merely traders of the Sky Sword Pavilion. Are they worthy of being called supremacies? The cultivators of the underworld are really short-sighted. Martial Uncle Sikong, although these two are small fries of the Sky Sword Pavilion, they are still heavenly evolution realm cultivators. 4 ants of the underworld like them, aren't they supremacies? As soon as Sikong Wuji finished speaking, Xing Kang's voice rang out. It was very sarcastic, and his face was full of disdain. Humph! Nie Tian let out a cold harumph. With a strange look in his eyes, he shot Xing Kang a cold glance and said, If I'm an ant and you can't even withstand a single sword strike from me, then who do you think you are? You! Xing Kang's face darkened when he heard Nie Tian's mockery. He roared, Bullsh *T. Who said I can't take one strike from you? That's what he said. Nie Tian pointed at Sikong Wuji and smiled cold. Is he also farting? Sikong Wuji's face darkened slightly. He glared at Xing Kang cold, and the latter's face turned pale. He was so scared that he was about to cry. Xing Kang hurriedly said, Martial Uncle Sikong, I said he was farting, not you. Shut up! Sikong Wuji reprimanded coldly. He then looked at Nie Tian with a cold look. He said coldly, It's true that he can't take one strike from you, but you can't take one strike from me either. Chapter 699. Nie Tianling looked at Sikong Wuji coldly with a hint of provocation in his eyes. He admitted that Sikong Wuji's talent in sword principle was very strong. To be able to step into the sword spirit realm at the age of 20 was indeed amazing. However, in the eyes of Nie Tian, who was at the peak of sword principle in the heaven realm, his talent in sword principle was only amazing. He was not a real peerless genius. The 5 peak sword principles in the heaven realm basically reached the peak of the sword spirit realm at the age of 20 and comprehended the profound meaning of the sword before the age of 30. As for Sikong Wuji, he was pompous and had just stepped into the sword spirit realm. It was unknown how such an impetuous person could reach the sword spirit realm. The path of sword principle required more tenacity than ordinary martial principles. Sikong Wuji's talent in sword principle was high, but he was too arrogant. This was a fatal flaw for a sword practitioner. It was very likely that he would be stuck in the sword spirit realm for the rest of his life. Sikong Wuji felt the provocation in Nie Tian's eyes. His eyes darkened and a hint of killing intent flashed in them. That's right, it was killing intent. Nie Tian only expressed his dissatisfaction slightly, but Sikong Wuji actually wanted to kill him. This person's arrogance was evident. Sikong Wuji's eyes flickered slightly, and his expression became even more arrogant. He said coldly, Nie Tian, I admit that your sword intent is very strong, but it's a pity that you're a martial artist from a lower world, and your sword Dao realm is only sword momentum. So, you can't take my sword. Nie Tian smiled faintly and did not deny it. Sikong Wuji did not attack directly, which made Nie Tian feel a little strange. With Sikong Wuji's temperament, he should have attacked without hesitation. Why was he suppressing his emotions? Nie Tian glanced at Sun Hai and immediately understood. Sikong Wuji was actually afraid of Sun Hai, so he did not attack directly. Sun Hai looked at Sikong Wuji and took a step forward. He said lightly, Young Master Nie Tian, my junior brother and disciple are young and impetuous. Please don't take it to heart, young Master Nie Tian. How could Sun Hai be unable to discern that Sikong Wuji was obviously envious that Nie Tian's sword insight was stronger than his, and that was why Sikong Wuji was targeting Nie Tian. I'm a magnanimous person, of course I won't take it to heart. Nie Tian smiled faintly, but there was an indescribable sense of foreboding in his heart. Although Sun Hai was kind, he would not go so far as to apologize. This was not in line with his identity. It seemed that he had something to ask of Nie Tian. Could it be? Nie Tian suddenly thought of something. His pupils trembled slightly, and he knew something was wrong. Nirvana Saint Heart. Nie Tian guessed that Sun Hai must have sensed that the Nirvana Sacred Heart was in his hands, which was why he was so polite. Young Master Nie Tian. As expected, Sun Hai smiled again and said, "You have an item on you that belongs to our Sky Sword Pavilion. Could you please hand it over? On behalf of the Sky Sword Pavilion, I cannot thank you enough." Something from the Sky Sword Pavilion? Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, but he pretended not to know. He smiled and said, "Do I have it on me?" Sikong Wuji's face suddenly darkened, and he said in a deep voice, "Brat, the Nirvana Sacred Heart is in your hands. It was stolen from the Sky Sword Pavilion by these two traitors. If you hand it over now, you will be a friend of the Sky Sword Pavilion. If you don't, you will be an enemy of the Sky Sword Pavilion." When he said the word enemy, Sikong Wuji's killing intent surged out uncontrollably. If it wasn't for Sun Hai stopping him, he would have already attacked Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He roughly understood. The two Shui-Tu masters were traitors of the Sky Sword Pavilion. They stole the Nirvana Sacred Heart and came to the 3,000 small worlds to commit crimes. However, their arrival triggered some kind of restriction in the Land of Bloody Massacre, so they couldn't leave the Land of Bloody Massacre. The people of the Sky Sword Pavilion had sensed their betrayal, so they sent Sun Hai and Sikong Wuji to capture them and bring the Nirvana Sacred Heart back. Of course, the main purpose of the Sky Sword Pavilion was to take back the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would also come at this time and obtain the Nirvana Sacred Heart before Sun Hai and the others? The Nirvana Sacred Heart is indeed in my hands. After understanding everything, Nie Tian let out a strange laugh. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He stared at the two Shui-Tu masters and said in a cold voice, "These two people are from the Sky Sword Pavilion. They came to the 3,000 small worlds and slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people from the Blood Slaughter Palace. They refined the 5-poison blood infant and killed tens of thousands of babies. A few days ago, they tried to kill hundreds of thousands of people in the Sumi Spirit City. Shouldn't the Sky Sword Pavilion be responsible for these lives?" Sun Hai was stunned for a moment, and his expression turned slightly ugly. Sikong Wuji's reaction was completely the opposite. He was completely infuriated by Nie Tian's words and shouted sternly, "The people they killed, of course they should be responsible for it. It has nothing to do with the Sky Sword Pavilion." Nie Tian raised his eyebrows and smiled coldly. "Just now, you said that they are from the Sky Sword Pavilion, and now you say that what they did has nothing to do with the Sky Sword Pavilion. Then, my Nirvana Sacred Heart was obtained from them. Does that mean that it has nothing to do with the Sky Sword Pavilion? You!" Sikong Wuji was extremely angry. There was a lump of stuffy anger in his chest that he couldn't spit out. "Brat, you're twisting words and forcing logic." At this time, Xing Kang's voice sounded. It was directly scolding Nie Tian. However, Nie Tian didn't pay any attention to him. He turned his gaze to Sun Hai and said indifferently, "Mr. Sun Hai, I respect you as a rank 7 sealer. Let me ask you, was what I said just now unreasonable?" Sun Hai was the only one among the three who was reasonable. Although Nie Tian had obtained the Nirvana Saint Heart, as long as Sky Sword Pavilion was willing to admit their mistake, pay some price, and spare the lives of the two Master Shui-Tu, after he used the Nirvana Saint Heart to save Emorushi, there was still a possibility that he could return the item to Sky Sword Pavilion. If Sun Hai also thought that he was being unreasonable, then he definitely wouldn't return the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Sun Hai's expression was extremely ugly. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "Young Master Nie Tian, the Sky Sword Pavilion did indeed make some mistakes in this matter. However, the actions of these two people were indeed not the intention of the Sky Sword Pavilion. Don't you think that it's a bit too much to blame the people they killed on the Sky Sword Pavilion? I'm too much? Nie Tion's eyebrows furrowed as his expression flickered. With a cold smile, he said, Sun Hai, why don't you ask those dead people if what I said just now was too much? Those people are all dead. How are we supposed to ask them? Xing Kong took a step forward and shouted arrogantly. Sikong Wuji was even more arrogant. A terrifying sword intent suddenly erupted from his body. His expression became incomparably cold as he said coldly, If they're dead, then they're dead. They're just a bunch of ants in the lower world. It's a waste for them to be alive. The Nirvana Sacred Heart belongs to the Sky Sword Pavilion. Today, you have to hand it over whether you want to or not. Junior brother. Seeing that Sikong Wuji was about to make a move, Sun Hai's expression became nervous. He had a good impression of Nie Tian and didn't want Nie Tian to die in the hands of Sikong Wuji. Bullshit. Nie Tian was also completely enraged. He clenched his fists tightly and said in a cold voice, You keep saying the lower world. Could it be that in your eyes, the people of the lower world don't deserve to live? Chapter 700. Sikong Wuji's fierce killing intent seemed to have solidified as he pressed down on Nie Tian. In an instant, Nie Tian felt a sense of suffocation, and he could not help but tremble. First stage Heavenly Evolution. At that moment, Nie Tian sensed Sikong Wuji's strength. It was at the first stage Heavenly Evolution. With Sikong Wuji's talent in swordsmanship, even if he was only at the first stage Heavenly Evolution, the two supremacies of the Land of Sanguinity would definitely not be his match. Tang Hao, Elder Yi, stepped back. Nie Tian's gaze darkened, and he suddenly became nervous. This was his first time facing a Heavenly Evolution, and he was not confident at all. He could sense that Sikong Wuji's aura was much stronger than Shadow Ghost. Just this aura alone was enough to make him feel pressured. Sikong Wuji had been stopped by Sun Hai earlier, so he did not make a move. Now that he had the chance to make a move, he would definitely not show mercy. Sir! Tang Hao cried out in alarm, and his eyes revealed a worried expression. Don't worry about me. Go to Tianluo City. Nie Tian said anxiously. Tang Hao, let's go first. I believe that Mr. Nie will be fine, Elder Yi also said anxiously. The other party was a Heavenly Evolution from the Sumer world. Tang Hao and Elder Yi would not be of any help if they stayed behind. Instead, they would become a burden to Nie Tian. Sigh. Tang Hao sighed deeply. He did not stay any longer and left with Elder Yi. The Nirvana Sacred Heart was with Nie Tian, so Sun Hai and Sikong Wuji did not stop them and allowed them to leave. Young Master Nie Tian, I'll give you one more piece of advice. Hand over the Nirvana Sacred Heart, and I guarantee that you will leave alive. Moreover, I'm willing to bring you into the Sumer world. How about that? Sun Hai stepped forward with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice. After all, he was not a bloodthirsty person, and he still hoped to resolve this peacefully. Mr. Sun, at this point, I'm afraid that even if you're willing to let me go, Sikong Wuji will not. Nie Tianling sneered and released his sword intent. He would fight to the death even if Sikong Wuji was very powerful. Sigh. Young Master Nie Tian, why are you doing this? Sun Hai sighed and retreated. In the void, only Nie Tian and Sikong Wuji were left. The two figures faced each other in the air like two sharp swords. The soaring sword intent seemed to have the power to split the sky. Nie Tian, since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Sikong Wuji's lips curled into a cold smile. He was indeed jealous of Nie Tian. He was jealous that a cultivator from the lower realms could actually condense a sword intent that was even more terrifying than his. So much nonsense. Nie Tianling smirked coldly. His sword will spread hundreds of meters around him, gathering in the air without dispersing, releasing a sharp aura. This sword will take your life. Sikong Wuji's face suddenly darkened as he unsheathed his longsword. A sword cry resounded in the air, and a soaring sword light bloomed in the sky. The sharpness of the sword light was so sharp that it could almost split the heavens and the earth. Seeing this scene, Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly. The sword intent in the air was inexplicably familiar to him. Suddenly, two words appeared in his mind: Xiantian's sword intent. Generally speaking, a swordsman had to go through the initial stages of sword moves, sword techniques, and sword qi. After the sword qi was condensed, the heart of the sword could be developed, and the sword intent could be condensed. However, some people were born as swordsmen and had sword intent in their bodies. These people were called Xiantian swordsmen, and their sword intent was called Xiantian sword intent. Sikong Wuji's sword intent was pure and powerful. Most importantly, he didn't have a heart of the sword, which was the sign of a Xiantian swordsman. Nie Tian finally understood why a proud and arrogant person like Sikong Wuji could set foot in the sword spirit realm so early. It was because he was born as a swordsman with sword intent. In other words, in the past 20 years, he had only reached the sword spirit realm from the sword intent realm. Therefore, it wasn't because Sikong Wuji was more talented than others, nor was it because he had better perseverance than others, but because he was luckier than others. Although Xiantian swordsmen were rare, it wasn't something that surprised Nie Tian. What surprised him was that Sikong Wuji's sword intent was so familiar. It was actually the limitless sword intent. The limitless sword intent was one of the sword intents that Nie Tian was most familiar with in his previous life. This sword intent was created by his best friend Mo Qianjun. The limitless sword saint Mo Qianjun was one of the top 5 sword intents in the heaven realm, just like Nie Tian. He was also a good friend of Nie Tian in his previous life. Sikong Wuji didn't know what kind of dog shit luck he had, but he actually obtained Mo Qianjun's inheritance. His ancestors must be burning incense. The sword intent of Xiantian swordsmen came from those peerless swordsmen who had comprehended the profound meaning of the sword. After these peerless swordsmen comprehended the profound meaning of the sword, their souls would communicate with the heaven and earth. Invisibly, their sword intent would dissipate between heaven and earth. Under normal circumstances, the sword intent that dissipated between heaven and earth would dissipate, but sometimes it would gather together and not disperse. Following the cycle of heaven and earth, life would be born. Some lucky life forms would obtain the sword intent inheritance by chance. Sikong Wuji was really lucky. He actually obtained the sword intent inheritance of the heaven realm's peak sword intent. This dog shit luck was too big. Unfortunately, heaven and earth would also choose the wrong person. Sikong Wuji was not worthy of the limitless sword intent. Damn! It's actually the limitless sword intent. In the next moment, Nie Tian's face suddenly darkened. If it was any other sword intent, he wouldn't be too afraid. However, the limitless sword intent made him feel that it was very troublesome. In his previous life, Nie Tian and Mo Qianjun were on par with each other. The two of them had fought several times without a clear winner. The limitless sword intent was on par with Nie Tian's proud sword intent. Now that Sikong Wuji had inherited the limitless sword intent, his sword art realm was 1 level higher than Nie Tian's, and his strength was almost 1 level higher than Nie Tian's. The gap between them was very terrifying. You're afraid. Sikong Wuji noticed the trembling in Nie Tian's eyes. He sneered and his eyes revealed extreme contempt. Afraid? Nie Tianling laughed. His eyes flashed and he said coldly, "It's just Xiantian's sword intent. I don't know how much of the limitless sword intent you can exert. Make your move. You're courting death." Sikong Wuji's face turned cold. The sword intent in his body instantly condensed, and the 7-void sword made a sharp explosion. A huge sword appeared in the air. On the blade of the sword, there was a dazzling flame. The sharpness of the sword was unparalleled. Junior brother, don't kill. Sun Hai felt the power of Sikong Wuji's sword and screamed, but it was too late. Proud sword art, sword sealing forbidden array. Nie Tian stood proudly in the air. His whole body was surging with sword intent, and his whole body was releasing dripping blood qi. The next moment, in the midst of the blood qi, the surrounding space suddenly tightened, and a strange blood-colored array directly appeared. The sword-sealing forbidden array used blood qi as a guide and the purest sword intent to condense the array. It was even stronger than the 12 heaven-slaying sword array. Sword-sealing forbidden array, demon sword burning the world. Nie Tian was in the array, and his cold voice sounded. He raised his hand, and the terrifying power of the array gathered on the sword edge. The sword light surged hundreds of meters away, and the cold intent was about to burst out. Chapter 701. In the void, Nie Tian stabbed out with his sword, and the endless power of the blood-colored formation surged. The surrounding space of hundreds of meters instantly turned into a blood-colored ocean. The blood-colored sword will surged in the air like stormy waves, sweeping over with great momentum. It's actually a sword formation. When Sun Hai saw the scene in the void, his eyes trembled violently. He did not expect that Nie Tian could actually activate a sword formation, and it was such a terrifying one at that. Feeling the terrifying momentum of Nie Tian's sword, Sikong Wuji's gaze froze for a moment, and then he sneered. Is it useful? Rumble. The next moment there was a violent collision sound in the air. Monstrous waves were set off in the space, the wind and clouds surged, and the sky changed color. Billowing waves of air spread from the center of the collision, and the two figures in the void retreated at high speed. Nie Tian felt a dull impact on his chest, and his whole body was sent flying hundreds of meters away. On the other hand, although Sikong Wuji was also forced to retreat, he only took a few steps back. His body shook, and then he completely stabilized himself. With this move, Sikong Wuji had the absolute upper hand. His strength was much higher than that of Nie Tian, and his realm of swordsmanship was also not comparable to that of Nie Tian. The gap between the two was too big. The wings on Nie Tian's back flapped, and he finally stabilized himself. However, his body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet. He had just finished fighting with the Netherworld Ghost, and had consumed too much of his Yuanli. His body had reached its limit after fighting head-on with Sikong Wuji's sword. If he had been at his peak at the moment, he might not have been injured by Sikong Wuji's sword. He's not dead. Sikong Wuji's sword made Nie Tian spit out blood. However, there was not joy in his eyes, but shock and confusion. Nie Tian was just a warrior in the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel. How could he not die after taking a direct blow from him? How could this be possible? He's really not dead? In the distance, Xing Kong had a shocked expression on his face as well. His eyes were wide open, and if they were to get any wider, his eyeballs would have popped out. Sikong Wuji was one of the 4 monstrous geniuses of the Sky Sword Pavilion. Even in the entire Shumi world, he was considered a genius. However, he couldn't even kill a cultivator from a lower world with a single strike. If this matter were to spread, Sikong Wuji would probably become a joke in the Shumi world. What a powerful sword formation! Sun Hai, who was at the side, was also shocked, but his reaction was relatively calm. His spiritual power was close to level 80, and he could feel that the sword formation Nie Tian had used just now was extremely powerful, almost no weaker than a level 7 spirit formation. Moreover, there was an abnormally terrifying aura hidden within the spirit formation. Nie Tian's strength was probably not enough, and he had not displayed the true power of the sword formation. How could a martial artist from a lower world grasp such a terrifying sword array? A thought emerged in Sun Hai's mind. Nie Tian's identity is not simple. Tang Hao and Yi Linyun, who were by Nie Tian's side, were definitely the peak experts of the 3,000 small worlds. However, They were very respectful in front of Nie Tian, which was very strange. Moreover, the sword formation that Nie Tian was using now made Sun Hai even more suspicious. He even suspected that Nie Tian was not from the 3,000 small worlds. However, this was nothing. Just now, when Nie Tian slashed down with his sword, Sun Hai felt an abnormally terrifying power from his body, as if there was something terrible hidden in the latter's body. Nie Tian, who are you? Sun Hai frowned slightly, and his eyes could not help but tremble. Nie Tian took a step forward, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and raised the corner of his mouth into a mocking smile. Sikong Wuji, your sword is only SOSO. This sentence was obviously mocking Sikong Wuji, saying that Nie Tian could not take his sword. This caused Sikong Wuji's expression to become abnormally ugly. Nie Tian, you're courting death. Sikong Wuji was extremely angry, and he roared viciously. The sword intent in his body became even more violent, and he stabbed out again. The sword intent was shocking, and the mighty sword intent whistled over. A huge force forcefully pressed down on Nie Tian, swift and fierce. Nie Tian felt the pressure on his face. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he flapped his wings and quickly retreated. However, Sikong Wuji's strength was too strong. Even if Nie Tian's figure was extremely fast, he was still hit by the huge force. His body swayed in the void, and he spat out a mouthful of blood again. Nie Tian's figure retreated dozens of meters again, and his face became even paler, as if he could fall at any time. Nie Tian, let's see how long you can last. Sikong Wuji roared fiercely, and his eyes were incomparably stern. It seemed that he had made up his mind to kill Nie Tian. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a strange force surging out. He frowned, and his eyes immediately fell on the spiritual dragon ring on his hand. That force was coming from the spiritual dragon ring. The spiritual dragon ring was the ring that the former president of the Alchemists Guild, Huiyuan, gave to Nie Tian before his death. When Nie Tian left the chaotic abyss, Queen Medusa gave him a little emerald dragon. That little emerald dragon fused with the spiritual dragon ring, and it also unlocked the powerful seal in the spiritual dragon ring, the spiritual dragon seal. Nie Tian observed carefully, and when he saw his blood inadvertently soaking into the spiritual dragon ring, he actually had a very real feeling about the spiritual dragon seal in the spiritual dragon ring, as if the spiritual dragon seal was in his body. Why didn't I have this feeling when I sprinkled my blood on the spiritual dragon ring before? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his brows furrowed. Perhaps the blood had to be thick enough to activate the power of the spiritual dragon ring. What the hell is that? Sikong Wuji also sensed a strange force surging out of Nie Tian's body, which made him feel inexplicable fear. At this moment, the spiritual dragon ring suddenly flashed, and a little emerald dragon flew out. Its whole body was green, and it looked lifelike. It was the little emerald dragon, but at this moment its body had become a lot bigger, and it was already 5 or 6 meters long. The little emerald dragon was completely solid, and it was no different from a real divine dragon, except that its body was a little smaller. The emerald dragon floated in the air, and it circled around Nie Tian. Suddenly, endless dragon chi gushed out, directly dispersing Sikong Wuji's oppressive sword intent. Phew! Nie Tian let out a long breath, and his eyes slightly trembled. He felt a strong sealing power from the emerald dragon. It seemed that the emerald dragon had absorbed a lot of the spiritual dragon seal's power in the spiritual dragon ring, and even its body had become bigger. This is... Seeing the little emerald dragon beside Nie Tian, Sun Hai and the others were shocked, and their necks straightened. In the next moment, Sun Hai noticed the spiritual dragon ring on Nie Tian's hand. His eyes suddenly trembled, and he couldn't help but cry out, "Dragon ring! You are from the 10,000 demons dragon abyss! It really is a dragon ring!" Sikong Wuji also noticed the spiritual dragon ring on Nie Tian's hand. His heart violently trembled, and his eyes became blurred. 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss? Hearing the name mentioned by Sun Hai, Nie Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. He didn't know what kind of organization it was, and it was the first time he heard of it. He had obtained the spiritual dragon ring from Huiyuan, but before he could ask him where he got the spiritual dragon ring, the latter passed away. Chapter 702. Nie Tian frowned slightly. It sounded like the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss was a terrifying organization. Otherwise, Sun Hai and the others wouldn't be so surprised. Nie Tian, you really aren't from the 3,000 small worlds. After a long while, Sun Hai finally calmed down, and fear could be seen in his eyes as he looked at Nie Tian. Since Nie Tian had the dragon ring, Sun Hai was sure that he was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Teacher, this kid has a powerful background. Xing Kong walked to Sun Hai's side. His face was pale and his voice was trembling. He was obviously frightened. Sun Hai's face turned serious. If Nie Tian was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, then he wouldn't be able to get the Nirvana Sacred Heart back. Sikong Wuji was stunned. He thought that Nie Tian was just a person from the lower world. He didn't expect Nie Tian's identity to be even more terrifying than his. Nie Tian was also stunned. Looking at the reactions of Sun Hai and the others, the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss was indeed terrifying. They were so afraid of it. Sun Hai was already a rank 7 sealer. Sky Sword Pavilion was definitely one of the top forces in the Sumer world. However, they were afraid of the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. So what if he's from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss? Suddenly, Sikong Wuji's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. Killing intent surged from his body and he roared, "I'll kill you all the same." As he roared, Sikong Wuji moved. His body seemed to have turned into a sharp sword as he dashed towards Nie Tian. "Sikong Wuji, you're crazy." Sun Hai was stunned and roared. If Sikong Wuji killed someone from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, it would bring disaster to Sky Sword Pavilion. However, it was too late. Sikong Wuji's figure had already dashed out. Sun Hai couldn't stop him. Nie Tian was taken aback. He hadn't expected that Sikong Wuji would dare to attack him. As a thought entered his mind, the green dragon's body shook, and an illusory dragon flew out of it, charging towards Sikong Wuji. Limitless sword. Sikong Wuji let out a deep roar and his figure turned into a ray of light. The brilliance of his sword blossomed in the sky and a sharp aura surged forth with a murderous intent. Roar! In the void, the shadow of the dragon roared. It raised its head to the sky and roared, releasing unrestrained dragon energy. Boom! A loud sound rang out as Sikong Wuji's sword struck the dragon shadow. His figure suddenly became sluggish, unable to advance any further. He frowned. He didn't expect the green dragon's power to be so terrifying. Sun Hai and Xing Kong were also stunned. That seemingly ordinary dragon shadow was actually able to block Sikong Wuji's strongest sword. This was too inconceivable. Good chance. At this moment, Nie Tian seized the opportunity and arrived above Sikong Wuji's head. He sneered and slashed down with his sword. Nie Tian immediately used his strongest move, Weeping Blood Soul Slash. A blood-colored sword image slashed down towards Sikong Wuji with extreme killing intent. Since Sikong Wuji wanted his life, there was no need for Nie Tian to hold back. Oh no! Sikong Wuji felt the pressure above his head. He raised his head and his eyes trembled violently. Bang! In the next moment, the blood-colored sword image slashed down and Sikong Wuji fell down like a meteor. Junior brother! Seeing this, Sun Hai roared angrily and swooped down towards the falling figure. Nie Tian squinted his eyes and saw that the body of the little green dragon in the sky had shrunk again. It was now only 1 meter long. He immediately understood that the dragon shadow was released by the green dragon after it absorbed the spiritual dragon seal's power. When the power of the seal was exhausted, the green dragon's body had shrunk. Little guy, Hurry up and return to the spiritual dragon ring to absorb the power of the seal. The corner of Nietion's mouth rose slightly. The little green dragon circled around and returned to the spiritual dragon ring. Every time the green dragon's power was used, it had to return to the spiritual dragon ring to absorb the power of the seal. This made Nietion a little distressed. He had obtained the spiritual dragon ring for more than a month, and the green dragon had only absorbed a little bit of power. It seemed that he had to find a way to increase the speed at which the green dragon absorbed the power of the seal in the future. With the spiritual dragon ring, Nietion had another trump card. This trump card couldn't be used casually and could only be used when he encountered a very powerful enemy. Nietion didn't care about Sun Hai and Sikong Wuji. He raised his eyebrows and fixed his eyes on Xing Kong and the two supremacies beside him. With a flash, Nietion came to Xing Kang's side. What do you want? Xing Kong could feel the killing intent in Nietion's eyes. His face turned pale and his tongue began to spin. Sikong Wuji had said that he couldn't even take a single strike from Nietion. Just now, when he saw Nietion's strength with his own eyes, he was even more terrified. Scram! Nietion glared at Xing Kong and spat out a word coldly. Xing Kong gulped and ran away in fear. Nietion didn't care about Xing Kong. His cold eyes were fixed on the two supremacies of the land of blood slaughter. The tragedy of the blood slaughter palace and the 5 poison blood infant was caused by these two. How could Nietion let them go? We are from Sky Sword Pavilion. You can't kill us. The two supremacies' Yuan veins were sealed, and they were no different from trash. In front of Nietion, they didn't have the slightest ability to fight back. When they felt the killing intent in Nietion's eyes, sweat appeared on their foreheads. The corner of Nietion's mouth rose into a cold smile. He said indifferently, Sun Hai only captured you but didn't kill you. It seems that the two of you have a high status in Sky Sword Pavilion. These two stole the Nirvana Sacred Heart and betrayed Sky Sword Pavilion. However, Sun Hai only sealed their strength and didn't kill them. This meant that they had some background. Yes. The eyes of one of them flashed as if he saw a glimmer of hope. He nodded frantically and said, We are the sons of the Vice Pavilion Master of Sky Sword Pavilion. You can't kill us. Otherwise, my father definitely won't let you go. Really? Nietion Tianling smiled coldly. So these two were the sons of the Vice Pavilion Master of Sky Sword Pavilion. No wonder Sun Hai didn't dare to kill them directly. Nietion guessed that once these two were brought back to Sky Sword Pavilion, they would at most be locked up. After a while, they might be released again. These two fellows had committed grave crimes. Nietion obviously wouldn't let them go like this. Since you've come to the 3,000 little worlds, then leave your lives here. Nietion raised his eyebrows. His expression instantly turned cold and 2 sword shadows shot out. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 bloody lights appeared in the air. 2 heads fell to the ground. Before they died, their eyes were still filled with disbelief. They never dreamed that they would lose their lives on this trip to the 3,000 little world. Furthermore, they died in such a sullen manner at the hands of a cultivator from the 3,000 little worlds. You killed them? Xing Kong was dumbfounded. Even Sun Hai didn't dare to touch the lives of these 2 people. Yet Nietion actually killed them just like that? They're just 2 scum. So what if I killed them? Is there a need to be so surprised? Nietion smiled indifferently. He looked at Xing Kong with deep disdain. At this time, Sun Hai's figure appeared again. In his arms was Sikong Wuji, who was already unconscious. Chapter 703. N. Nietion turned around to look at Sun Hai and nodded. He did not look panicked at all. Nietion used his divine sense to check on Sikong Wuji. He was still breathing, but he was unconscious. This guy was really lucky. He did not die. Sun Hai's face suddenly became gloomy. He stared at Nietion and suppressed the terrifying anger in his heart. Those two were the sons of the Vice Pavilion Master. Even he did not dare to kill them. Now that they were killed by Nye Tian, how could he explain this to the Vice Pavilion Master when he returned? Nye Tian felt Sun Hai's anger, but there was no fear on his face. Instead, he asked calmly, "Do you want to kill me?" "Master, he killed people from Sky Sword Pavilion and injured Martial Uncle Sikong. You must kill him." Before Sun Hai could speak, Xing Kong, who was at the side, said emotionally. Nye Tianling looked at Xing Kong coldly. The latter was so scared that he immediately hid behind Sun Hai. "Shut up!" Sun Hai glared at Xing Kong fiercely. Then, he looked at Nye Tian and said word by word, "Nye Tian, are you from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss? If I said no, would you believe me?" Nye Tian smiled and asked back. "No," Sun Hai replied cold. He had already determined that Nye Tian was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Moreover, he could not kill Nye Tian. Even if he brought Nye Tian's head back, the Vice Pavilion Master would not let it go. Therefore, if Nye Tian wanted to resolve this matter, he would have to go to the Heavenly Sword Pavilion himself and explain it to the Vice Sect Master. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. He paused and said directly, "I have no relationship with the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. I obtained the Spirit Dragon Ring by accident. I also want to know what kind of organization the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss is." "You're lying!" Xing Kong roared again. "If you are not from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, how can you use the power of the Dragon Ring? Only the owner of the Dragon Ring can use the power of the Dragon Ring. You are clearly the owner of the Dragon Ring. You are from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss." Sun Hai frowned as if he was thinking about something. Nye Tian shook his head and smiled. He looked at Sun Hai and said, "Sun Hai, do you think so too?" Sun Hai raised his head and said with a calm expression, "Nye Tian, I don't care if you're from the abyss of 10,000 demons or not. You have to come back to the Heaven Sword Pavilion with me." "I have to go back with you?" Nye Tian went blank for a moment before his face grew cold. "What if I don't want to?" "You Tian Hai Tian Hai Tian Hai Tian Tian Hai, I have." It was obvious that he was determined to take Nye Tian back even if he had to use force. Nye Tian shook his head slightly and said coldly, "Sun Hai, you're a 7th grade sealer, but your battle prowess might not be higher than Sikong Wuji's. If we were to have a life and death battle, it's hard to say who would win." Nye Tian shook his head. "Sun Hai, you are a rank 7 sealer, but you might not be stronger than Sikong Wuji." Nye Tian was right. Sun Hai was a level 7 sealer who specialized in the Tao of sealing. His current strength was also at the first level of Heaven Evolution, and his true battle prowess was below Sikong Wuji's. Sun Hai was not a match for Sikong Wuji. Nye Tian was right. Sun Hai was a rank 7 sealer. "Since you know I am a rank 7 sealer, aren't you afraid that I will seal your Yuan Meridian?" Sun Hai smirked. A terrifying sealing light appeared behind him. "Since you know that I'm a rank 7 sealer, aren't you afraid that I'll directly seal your Yuan Meridian?" The corners of Sun Hai's mouth curled up in a strange manner, and a beam of sealing light appeared behind him. With Sun Hai's sealing abilities, he could instantly seal a Heaven Evolution realm martial artist if he was given the slightest chance. Sun Hai was stunned. He scanned Nye Tian with his divine sense. His expression froze and he was speechless. Sun Hai went blank for a moment before he scanned Nye Tian with his divine sense. His expression instantly stiffened, and he couldn't utter a word. "Teacher, what's wrong?" Xing Kong could not help but ask when he saw Sun Hai's expression. Sun Hai reacted after more than 10 seconds. "Your meridian is a dragon meridian." He had scanned Nye Tian with his divine sense, and was shocked to find that his meridian was different from ordinary cultivators. It was a dragon-shaped meridian. The dragon-shaped meridian was filled with the power of thunder. It could not be sealed. Sun Hai would lose his greatest advantage if he could not seal Nye Tian's meridian. He could not fight with Nyetian. Nyetian smiled. He knew how terrifying a 9-star dragon meridian was. Even a rank 9 sealer could not seal a 9-star dragon meridian, let alone a rank 7 sealer. A 9-star dragon meridian was comparable to a heavenly spirit body. The dragon meridian was powerful beyond imagination. Could not be sealed so easily. Sun Hai. Nyetian's lips curled into a strange smile. He took a step forward and said, I know you are an honest person. I don't want to make things difficult for you. Those two were killed by me, Sikong Wuji was injured by me, and the Nirvana Sacred Heart is also in my hands. But I have something important to do, and cannot leave the 3,000 small world. But I can promise you that I will go to the Sumer world and visit Sky Sword Pavilion. When? Sun Hai's eyes flickered and he asked urgently. 1 month if I'm fast, 3 months if I'm slow. Nyetian nodded. I'll wait for you. Sun Hai thought for a moment and said, I'll stay by your side during this period of time. 3 months later, we'll return to Sky Sword Pavilion together. Nyetian looked at Sun Hai's solemn expression and could not help but smile bitterly. It seemed that Sun Hai still did not believe him. Sun Hai turned around and handed Sikong Wuji to Xingkang. He said, Xingkang, you and Wuji return to Sky Sword Pavilion first. 3 months later, I will return with young Master Nyetian. Teacher, this. Xingkang's expression was awkward. If he brought the injured Sikong Wuji back, he would be scolded to death by the Vice Pavilion Master and the others. You can push all the blame to me. The Vice Pavilion Master will not make things difficult for you. Sun Hai said in a deep voice. Before Xingkang could speak, a scroll appeared in his hand and he opened it. Immediately, the scroll released a strong white light. In an instant, countless rays of light surged and the space within 10 meters was fixed. Space-time teleportation scroll. Nyetian felt a powerful force and his expression changed slightly. There was a plane gap between the 3,000 small worlds and the Sumer world. If one wanted to cross the plane gap, they had to use a space-time teleportation scroll or a space-time barrier. The plane gap between the lower plane and the middle plane was not big. A rank 5 space-time teleportation scroll could transfer planes. However, space-time attribute spiritual array masters were extremely rare, so space-time teleportation scrolls were very precious. Nyetian had been in the 3,000 small worlds for a long time, but he had only seen one space-time attribute spiritual array master, and that was Yao Fi. However, with Yao Fi's attainments in spiritual array, it was impossible for him to create a rank 5 space-time teleportation scroll. Moreover, space-time teleportation was a very dangerous thing, especially the transfer between planes. If one was not careful, they could fall into a space-time crack and be torn apart by a space-time storm. Therefore, under normal circumstances, very few people would transfer planes. Martial artists from the lower planes had no chance to go to the middle planes, and martial artists from the middle planes looked down on the lower planes. Why would they come to the lower planes? A moment later, the teleportation spiritual array was formed. Xingkang's expression was ugly, but he still stepped out and entered the teleportation spiritual array. Chapter 704. After Sikong Wuji and Xingkang left, Sun Hai's gaze immediately fell on Nyetian. He squeezed out a smile and said, Young Master Nyetian, if you have anything to do, please go now. Nyetian smiled speechlessly. Sun Hai's words made it sound like he was making arrangements for his funeral. In fact, from Sun Hai's point of view, as long as Nyetian returned to Sky Sword Pavilion with him, there would only be one outcome: death. The Vice Pavilion Master was a cruel and merciless man who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Nyetian had killed his 2 sons, so there was no way he would let Nyetian live. All right, let's go. The 2 supremacies and 6 supremacies of the land of bloody massacre were all killed. The remaining people were just small fries. There was no point in staying here anymore. After returning, Tang Hao would send people to take over the land of bloody massacre. Nie Tian was worried about Emorushi, so he didn't stay any longer and immediately returned to Heaven Luo City. 3 days later, Nie Tian and Sun Hai's figures appeared in the sky above Heaven Luo Mountain. As soon as the two figures appeared, Tian Luo Mountain rumbled and shook violently. Waves of dust rose from the ground, and then an enormous figure charged out. The enormous figure was extremely familiar. It was the ancient dragon soul, Di Shi. "Good brother, you're finally back." Di Shi's voice was vast and boundless, and the entire void trembled. "This is..." Sun Hai saw Di Shi's figure and his face turned pale. He couldn't stay calm anymore. If he was not mistaken, what appeared in front of him should be the soul of an ancient divine dragon. Its aura was so powerful. Although it was only in its soul form, the pressure from its aura was stronger than that of a high-level heavenly evolution realm warrior. A third-rate city in one of the 3,000 small worlds actually hid an ancient dragon lake. This was just too shocking. "This is my sworn brother." Nie Tian smiled faintly and moved to Di Shi's side. Being able to surprise Sun Hai like this, Nie Tian felt slightly proud. "Sworn brother?" Sun Hai gulped. His figure swayed and he almost fell down. A human martial artist had become sworn brothers with an ancient dragon soul. When had the 3,000 small worlds become so crazy? At this time, Sun Hai had a higher opinion of Nie Tian. He was also glad that he did not kill Nie Tian. Otherwise, if this dragon soul had a chance to recover its physical body, it would tear the entire Sumeru world apart. "This human is quite powerful. Is he your friend?" Di Shi's eyes, which were as bright as the sun and the moon, landed on Sun Hai. The latter immediately felt a strong pressure, almost suffocating him. Even though he was a heavenly evolution realm martial artist from the Sumeru world, he could not withstand the oppressive aura of the dragon soul. "Big brother, he's my friend." Nie Tian intended to use Di Shi to intimidate Sun Hai. Since he had achieved his goal, he smiled faintly and reminded Di Shi not to go overboard. "Sir Dragon God, I'm a friend of Sir Nie Tian." Sun Hai felt the pressure lessen slightly. He bowed deeply and said respectfully. In front of the ancient dragon soul, even Sun Hai had to lower his head. Di Shi's huge dragon body rolled, and his dragon head shook. He directly lifted Nie Tian up, and his body moved, rushing up to the sky. "Mr. Sun Hai, you enter the city first." "I'll be there shortly," Nie Tian shouted. He had already followed Di Shi to the top of the clouds. Sun Hai watched the man and the dragon disappear into the clouds. His face was as pale as a sheet, and the shock in his heart was written on his face. He never thought that Nie Tian's identity would be so complicated. He had an ancient dragon soul by his side. In this way, things seemed to have become more complicated. Sun Hai's face revealed an unconcealable look of worry. He sighed softly, and his figure moved, entering Tianluo City. Above the clouds, Nie Tian sat on Di Shi's dragon head. He was slightly stunned and asked in confusion, "Big brother Di Shi, you seem to have something to say to me." Di Shi brought Nie Tian tens of thousands of meters up in the sky. Obviously, he wanted to avoid everyone. "Good brother, that guy's not weak. He seems to be a sealing master. He shouldn't be from the lower world, right?" Di Shi's dragon beard danced in the air, and his voice was deep and mighty. However, it only reached Nie Tian's ears. "He's from the middle world." Since Di Shi could tell, Nie Tian told him what happened in the land of bloody massacre. "It's like this." After listening, Di Shi said solemnly, "So, you're saying that you'll be in danger if you return to Sky Sword Pavilion with him?" "Not necessarily, because I have this." Nie Tian smiled faintly, and took out the spirit dragon ring. He didn't say anything about the spirit dragon ring earlier. "Now," he said, "this ring is called the spirit dragon ring. There's a powerful seal inside." Sun Hai and the others said that this ring came from an organization called the 10,000 Demon Dragon Abyss. Sky Sword Pavilion is very afraid of this organization. Sun Hai believes that I'm from the 10,000 Demon Dragon Abyss. Big Brother Dishi, take a look. Is this ring related to the Dragon Spring vein you mentioned? The moment Dishi saw the Spirit Dragon ring, his huge eyes slightly stiffened. He was very surprised. Then, he used his divine sense to explore the inside of the Spirit Dragon ring, and his expression became even more shocked. Seeing Dishi's reaction, Nie Tian couldn't help but frown. After a long time, Dishi slowly reacted and said, I did sense an aura from the Spirit Dragon ring. It's very similar to the Dragon Spring vein, but a little different. There's a powerful seal inside the Spirit Dragon ring. I've never seen a seal like this before, but I can feel that there's a powerful dragon soul imprisoned inside. There's a dragon soul imprisoned inside the Spirit Dragon ring. Nie Tian was stunned and his face was filled with shock. The Spirit Dragon seal was extremely powerful, even more powerful than Jean de Bao's 3,000 demon and deity seals and the 9 Serenities Demon Emperor's demonic devouring heaven seal. What kind of dragon soul was it? It was so powerful that it needed the Spirit Dragon seal to imprison it. Big Brother Dishi, is the dragon soul and the Spirit Dragon seal stronger than you? Nie Tian paused for a moment and asked in horror. Dishi's waving dragon beard stopped for a moment, and then his expression became shocked. He nodded heavily and said, It's stronger than me. This. Nie Tian's expression froze, and he said in shock, How is that possible? Dishi was the most powerful golden dragon from the Divine Dragon Clan, and he was also the war god of the Golden Dragon Clan. If the dragon soul in the Spirit Dragon seal was stronger than him, it undoubtedly meant that this imprisoned dragon soul was stronger than Dishi when it was alive. Did a divine dragon that was stronger than the war god of the Golden Dragon Clan exist? The answer was yes, but there was only one, and that was the Dragon Emperor of the Golden Dragon Clan. Only the Dragon Emperor of the Golden Dragon Clan was stronger than Dishi. Could it be that the dragon soul imprisoned in the Spirit Dragon seal was the Dragon Emperor of the Golden Dragon Clan? Thinking of this, Nie Tian's eyes became dull. Roar. This is impossible. At the same time, Dishi thought of something as well, and his enormous body shook abruptly as he roared furiously and shook the heavens and the earth. Dishi suddenly burst into rage, and his enormous body charged into the sky. The dark clouds in the surroundings surged, and the heavens and the earth changed color. Even space became distorted. Chapter 705. In the clouds, the dragon's soul was furious. Dragon chi surged and the space shook violently. Nie Tian couldn't stop Dishi, so he could only watch helplessly from the side. His big brother of the Dragon Clan was good, but he was easily angered. After a long time, Dishi finally calmed down. He looked at the spiritual dragon ring on Nie Tian's hand, and the dragon chi in his eyes became slightly moist. Nie Tian shook his head slightly and said in a deep voice, Brother Dishi, we can't be sure that the dragon soul sealed in the spiritual dragon ring is the Dragon Emperor. Don't be too sad. Even if the dragon soul is really the Dragon Emperor, it may not be a bad thing. At least it means that the Dragon Emperor is still alive. Nie Tian roughly knew how the Dragon Clan was destroyed, so he really couldn't believe that the dragon soul sealed in the spiritual dragon ring was the Dragon Emperor. But no one knew what happened to the Dragon Clan back then, so anything was possible. Dishi calmed down a lot and asked in a serious voice, Brother Nie Tian, where did you get the spiritual dragon ring? Nie Tian didn't hide anything and told him the truth. But he suddenly remembered that since Sun Hai identified him as a member of the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss based on the spiritual dragon ring on his hand, didn't it mean that everyone in the Abyss had a dragon ring? And if every dragon ring had a spiritual dragon seal, and every spiritual dragon seal imprisoned a dragon soul, then did it mean that all the Dragon Clan were imprisoned in the dragon ring? Thinking of this, Nie Tian's face turned pale. Just who was it that had the ability to seal all of the Dragon Clan in a ring? The more Nie Tian thought about it, the more likely it was, but he didn't dare to tell Dishi about it. Otherwise, the latter would make trouble again. Dishi couldn't figure out what was going on. He once again sent his divine sense into the spiritual dragon ring, trying to sense the aura in the spiritual dragon seal. But after spending more than half a day, he still couldn't break the seal, so he had to give up. Seeing that Dishi was very disappointed, Nye Tian said, "Brother Dishi, don't worry. Since I promised to find the dragon's spring vein for you, I will definitely do it. Now, I promise you that I will definitely unravel the secret within the dragon ring. I will also investigate the destruction of the dragon clan for you." "Good brother, with your words, big brother can rest assured." Dishi was extremely moved. His dragon eyes that were like the sun and moon flickered with a strange light. After comforting Dishi, Nye Tian did not stay any longer. He let Dishi return to the ground and entered Heaven Luo City. The city lord is back. As soon as Nye Tian's figure appeared at the city gate, he heard the cheers of the entire city. The news of him winning first place in the Shumi martial meet had long since spread. Now that he had returned to Heaven Luo City, it was definitely a glorious return. Just now, his and Dishi's figures had already alarmed the entire Heaven Luo City, and even the people from the nearby cities had rushed over, wanting to catch a glimpse of him. Nye Tian looked at the boiling crowd and shook his head speechlessly. He really didn't want to cause such a big commotion. "City Lord, you're back." At this time, a familiar figure appeared. It was the guard commander of Heaven Luo City, Gao Han. Nye Tian greeted Gao Han, and under the escort of a group of guards, he majestically entered the city. The crowd was about to go crazy, and many people shouted excitedly, "City Lord is so young, he is indeed a young hero. City Lord is so handsome, I want to give birth to a monkey for him. City Lord, please slow down, we haven't seen enough yet." The journey of thousands of meters took more than half an hour. When Nye Tian arrived at the City Lord's mansion, his entire body was covered in sweat. This journey was more arduous than a great battle. Finally entering the City Lord's mansion, Nye Tian let out a long breath of turbid air. The crowd crowded at the entrance of the City Lord's mansion, and only dispersed after a long time. Nye Tian laughed bitterly and said self-deprecatingly, "It turns out that it's not easy to be a hero. If it was Mou, he would definitely like this kind of scene, but Nye Tian didn't care at all. The reason why he didn't fly back directly was because he didn't want the people of Heaven Luo City to think that he was too cold. Sun Hai had already been waiting in the City Lord's mansion. Looking at Nye Tian from afar, he said in his heart, "Nye Tian, you clearly don't like this kind of scene, but you still insisted on coming here, just to make those people feel a little more comfortable? What kind of person are you?" "Mr. Sun Hai, I've kept you waiting." Nye Tian also saw Sun Hai, smiled faintly, and walked over. At this time, Tang Hao, Elder Yi, and the others also appeared. They had returned to Heaven Luo City not long ago, and had been waiting for Nye Tian to return. Nye Tian hurriedly greeted everyone and went straight to find Emorushi. After a while, Nye Tian came to Emorushi's room and looked at the beautiful girl lying quietly on the bed. The corner of his mouth slightly raised, and he said faintly, "Rushi, I'm back." Nye Tian stepped forward and checked Emorushi's state. Everything was normal. He no longer hesitated and directly took out the Nirvana Sacred Heart. The Nirvana Sacred Heart was the 8th demonic fire on the demonic fire list. It was very strange. It did not have any destructive power, but it had an extremely strong vitality. When the Nirvana Sacred Heart appeared, scarlet flames filled the entire room, but they did not have any burning power. Instead, they made people feel extremely exuberant vitality. Since I have already offended the Sky Sword Pavilion, there is no need to return this Nirvana Sacred Heart to them. Nye Tian murmured as he held the strange green liquid fire in his palm. He planned to let Emorushi directly fuse with the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Generally speaking, fusing with demonic fire was extremely dangerous. Many martial artists had their souls destroyed in order to fuse with demonic fire. However, the Nirvana Sacred Heart did not have any destructive power. Even if the fusion failed, it would not be life-threatening. As long as she could fuse with the Nirvana Sacred Heart, Emo Rushi would not only wake up, but her strength would also increase greatly. Her martial body would also become extremely powerful, and she would almost have an immortal body. Nie Tian felt the vitality in the space, and all the pores on his body opened up. There was an indescribable feeling of comfort. It was not easy to fuse with the Nirvana Sacred Heart. It had high requirements for a martial artist's Yuan spirit, Yuan meridian, and martial body. Otherwise, the two supremes from the land of bloody massacre would have fused with the Nirvana Sacred Heart long ago. Emo Rushi had the phoenix soul in her body, and her Yuan spirit was the Nine Heavens Divine Phoenix, a supreme being's Yuan spirit. There was a high chance of success in fusing with the Nirvana Sacred Heart. With this thought, Nie Tian no longer hesitated. He raised his palm slightly and controlled the Nirvana Sacred Heart to move slowly. The Nirvana Sacred Heart floated above Emo Rushi's body. Nie Tian's body surged with gentle Yuan Qi and poured it into the Nirvana Sacred Heart. Boom! The Nirvana Sacred Heart was stimulated by the Yuan Qi, and it immediately released surging flames. The vitality in the room became even denser. Slowly, thin green flames were released from the green liquid fire. That was the purest form of life energy. A moment later, Emo Rushi's body was wrapped in green flames, looking holy and dignified. I must succeed. Nie Tian's heart beat wildly. The next step was the most crucial one. He had to control the green flames and pour them into Emo Rushi's body. If he succeeded, it would mean that Emo Rushi's body could fuse with the Nirvana Sacred Heart. At this moment, Nie Tian's heart jumped to his throat. Under his scorching gaze, the thin green flame slowly came into contact with Emo Rushi's body.